Hello, everybody. I'll call this meeting to order. And just mention this meeting is being recorded. If any other persons present here or there are recording the meeting, must notify the chair at this time.
Right behind you, Anthony from the recording.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we'll do a roll call of members. My name is George Tolimpsis, and I'm the planning board chair.
Jeff Sauer, Vice Chair.
Victor Michelle Clark.
And where's it?
You're on there.
Peter.
Peter McIver, Planning Board Member.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from November 7th. So motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I thought the substantive content was good, reflective of the meeting. I had a stylistic issue I wanted to raise. I see that planning board members or members of the EDC were referred to as member or their role. But I saw that for the public input, the members of the public referred to as citizen. And I was just hesitant to use that because we're not obviously determining someone's citizenship. And I know it was meant to avoid something like Ms., Mr. But I was just concerned about using that term. I know I don't have a elegant alternative like member of the public, so-and-so, but resident wasn't comfortable using that.
Resident.
People might not be a resident, so.
What about addresses, right? People that have addresses, whatever.
Say Mr.
Wanted to do that, but I was afraid that would raise all sorts of issues. Look, I was just trying to be consistent. Figured they were citizens.
Contributor.
Commentator.
I mean, if we want to be consistent with all previous minutes and the ones I do, it's Mr. and Miss.
No issue with that.
No, that's Mr. and Miss.
Look, I agree 100%. I'm all for it.
It's not Mrs., it's not Miss is neutral. Mr. is neutral.
Fine with me. I'll do that. If I have to take the minute.
Any other discussion of that point? Is that acceptable edit? No objection?
Well, it's not really an edit, it's going forward.
Well, I was going to suggest it as an
I
edit.
can edit
that.
these and
Okay.
add Mr. and Miss for everyone. Change the minutes, amend the minutes.
So with that edit, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Thank you. Unanimous. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, and this is specifically on the proposed amendment to the Chapter 880 subdivision regulations relative to the open space cluster development. Eric, would you be willing to just frame this a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
So back in October 16th of this year, the city council adopted amendments to the zoning ordinance to revise significantly the open space cluster development ordinance. Part of that has to involve the subdivision regulations so that they match up when someone does a subdivision in the city of Greenfield. So these amendments were prepared by the Franklin Regional Council of Governments as part of the open space cluster development amendments. And pretty much it's just a pretty clear task that the board has to adopt the language as is if we're going to match the already approved zoning ordinance.
And this is different than change to the zoning ordinance, which we, planning board recommend, and the council decides. This is something the board would enact.
Exactly. So subdivision regulations are under the purview of local planning boards, and a majority vote of the full board, not those present, is required to adopt amended regulations for subdivision.
So, and one of the requirements is to have offer a public hearing. So I open it to if anyone open the public hearing. And if any members of the public want to comment on that particular issue, open to hearing it.
Talking about open space, George, so that people can understand. It's the open space that you're talking about.
Yep, that's what I read.
Just
Yep,
open space cluster development.
yep.
I just stated that.
Hearing or, oh, I see a hand. Yes, Stephanie. You can
Hi,
state your name
Stephanie
and address.
Duclos, 166 Chapman Street. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight, George. I just had a question more than anything, because I didn't see the attachments to the agenda. And I looked in the planning department, but I don't know where they were. But my question was about the open space cluster development, like the majority vote. Are we defining what majority vote means? Or is it just the majority of the people that are in the room? Or is it the majority of the quorum? Or is it majority of the total board? And I just
Sure.
had that question. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that question, which I already did previously, but I'll state it
Sure.
again.
Yeah. Thank you.
To adopt subdivision regulations, it must be a majority of the full planning board. In other words, the planning board is 5 members, it must be 3. If there's 3 present here, all 3 have to vote in the affirmative. But if you have 3 people here and 2 vote, that doesn't cover, it must be a majority of the full board, 3 people.
Thank you.
And how,
Yes.
how many are on the planning board now?
5,
5, and how many are here today?
4.
4, there's one person who wasn't able to be here, and one person is up on the screen.
And it has to be people that are here that vote, or people that are also on the screen?
Attending, it can be virtual, yeah. Any other comments or questions about this process? Yes,
The last time I was at a meeting, I asked questions. Oh, my name is Joan Piper, I live at 95 Maple Street, Greenfield.
thank you.
I asked questions and I have seen nowhere where those questions were answered. And I'm trying to find out where we can get answers for the questions we have. Nobody's even told me where we can get the answers. By right actually means morally and legally correct.
I'll interject for just a second. We're gonna get to that issue. And I'm happy to entertain some public input. This is a public hearing about a very constrained issue about the open space cluster development getting added into the subdivision regulations.
Okay, does that mean, are you talking about me using?
No.
Okay, well, I did not understand that.
Yeah, no, happy to frame it. It's confusing stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why we're trying to frame it as best we can and also answer questions to clarify. And one of the clarification I'll offer is, Stephanie, you were thanking me for the chance to speak, and I'll just be clear. At a public hearing, the public has an absolute right to speak. So there is an issue of the chair's discretion for public input outside of a public hearing. I just wanted to clarify that so people. Any last thoughts, questions, comments about that particular issue? Yes.
Is this about the unlimited apartment size?
Nope. No, this is very specific to, I know, it can seem very obscure, but it's a technical thing about adding the open space cluster development, which was passed by the council, to the subdivision regulation. So it sounds like a lot of enthusiasm for moving on from this.
It is one time.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we need to vote to close the public hearing, right, or just?
Yes, right. I'll vote to close public hearing.
All right, is there a motion to close the public?
Second,
All board members in favor of closing the public hearing?
aye.
And Eric, though it's not on the agenda about voting on this today, it's not specifically on the agenda as an action item. I don't think.
No, it's public hearing, so you would, it's part of that process.
Okay, very good.
You would vote definitely today.
Thanks for the clarification. We all need some. So, okay, so is there board member who would want to make a motion to, what is it, what's the technical term?
I move to adopt the changes to code 880-10, open space cluster development into the subdivision subcode, correct?
Subdivision regulations.
Subdivision regulation.
Is it too late to ask a question?
Yes.
It is, close vote here on this topic. Yes.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion amongst board members? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Pete? Pete?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to get it to unmute. Aye.
Sure. Thank you very much. Okay. Now we're moving on to some action items. The first one is a particular project that we're is before us today. And it's site plan review for a proposed mixed-use project at 220 to 228 Main Street. Excuse me, to allow for 4 apartments on the second floor and 2 commercial units on the first floor. We have one here. Great. Thank you. Welcome to come up here. Sit.
Okay.
The mic will pick you up.
I mean, I have boards, but should I know that you've all reviewed it. Do I need to?
It probably, if there's
That'd be a good idea.
way to display it, yeah, the public could see.
Okay.
You know, can't have it. Right.
So public meaning we.
That's probably, they probably can't see it up there.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
You'll be my audience. So this is as we all know, in Greenfield, this is the project on Main Street with the plywood on the windows. Chapman and Main Street. And we are going to be renovating that building. And providing 4 apartments on the second floor and 2 commercial spaces on the first floor. And the basement is essentially mechanical equipment, and so forth. The building is existing. There's no issues that were to it. Entrances on this slide or to clean up the look. A lot of what we're going to be doing is cleaning up the look of the building. I'll show you that in a minute. And providing, quality commercial space for Kevin Greenfield. This is a site plan review, right? It's not a planning board issue. It's a requirement of a mixed use development that has site plan review approval, which is what this meeting is about. The building pretty much occupies the entire site. There's maybe about 4 feet on the front. That's part of the sidewalk. This is Main Street. This is Chapman. And this is Sada Grill over here, the beginning of that commercial space over that way. This is kind of the blank space for future development of the Wilson's project as that develops down Chapman Street. There's maybe about 10 or 11 feet on the backside of the building. We're going to be.
Just for people's orientation, this is the old country jeweler, former country jeweler.
And Greenfield Game. Main Street.
How many square feet? Just the square.
It's right on the plan here, 2,200. Per floor. So the 2 spaces, this was the Greenfield Games location over here. This was the country jeweler. There was a ramp that was existing there before. It was kind of a non-handicapped accessible ramp with a lot of things wrong with it and created this tunnel into the building. We're getting rid of that entrance. Country Jewelers, you came in and you had to go up a couple of steps to get into the Country Jewelers. That's going to be all modified as well. We're actually going to be restructuring the whole front, the slab, the floor of the on Main Street to accommodate our two new commercial units. There's a stairway in the middle that goes upstairs to the apartments, and that's existing and is going to be remaining. There's another stairway at the back of the building, goes up to the second floor, that remains as well. So that stairway kind of divides on Main Street the two units that we have, and we're basically going to be gutting all that. You come into at 3 different levels off of Main Street, so it's all accessible. And then there will be, instead of having the ramp there, we're going to use a chairlift to get you up into the commercial space for this unit. And for the one on the corner, it'll be the same thing. You come in a level lobby with the chairlift and some stairs to get you up into that unit. We're providing basic. I mean, if this is basically, we don't necessarily have a tenant for either of those. Anybody's interested, there's availability. So what part of the construction is going to be just for providing code required toilet fixtures, and then everything else will be gutted, brought up to energy code, brought up to handicap accessibility code, and hopefully rented. Upstairs. Go back. Thanks. Knew I had it. So again, Main Street, Chapman Street. Here's the stairway coming up from Main Street. That should have said here, we're building a new lobby for that. This will be the main entrance for the apartments upstairs. So there's a little like apartment building lobby there. Have mailboxes, it'll have an annunciator, an intercom system, so people can be, alerted upstairs that they're there and so forth. For that stair. There is a existing hallway that sort of links with the stairs, and we're basically using that to divide it up. And we've got 4 apartments, 2 on Chapman, 1 sort of on Main Street, and then 1 at the back that's sort of, accessible from the back. They are a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom units. They have, living space, kitchens that are mostly open to the living space, bathrooms, laundry facilities, and so forth. So each unit has the ability to have washers and dryers and so forth. And that's essentially it. There's an existing, you don't see this from Main Street, but there's an existing exterior courtyard that is against the building that Posada is in. Yeah, I always want to say Taylor's Tavern, but that building there's an exterior courtyard that's there that is kind of it allows light to come into this section of the building. So we have light around all sides, and we are adding windows downstairs, and we're adding windows upstairs. I'm just going to.
Oh, the unit's like 500 square feet.
Yeah, plus or minus. It's maybe, yeah, so.
And they're going to be market rate?
Market rate, yes, yeah. No parking. It's the central community, central CBD zone, so we don't have to worry about that. So there's no parking, but it'll be what it is. It's like all the other apartments downtown Greenfield.
And it's existing units in here now?
I think that there has been a number of uses. This is pretty interesting. Eric and I went back, we found old maps of Greenfield back to the turn of the century. This was actually 3 buildings built in. It's unclear whether they are 1 story or 2 stories, but 1 at the back and then 2 at the front. It's all wood construction. It's been a number of things because they were different buildings. The second floor if there even was a second floor back then, could have been all one-story roofs, is all over the place. So there's all kinds of different funky little levels in here that we're going to be cleaning up. So I forgot what the question was now.
Was there originally 2 units though?
Existing, how many existing?
How many existing? As far as we know, there was nothing there. There was an attempt, as the building, we, toured with the building inspector. There was an attempt to make an apartment up there.
There was an apartment back here in the 1920s, because I was out the old range board
Okay, cool.
on the second floor.
Yeah, so there's, I don't know what was originally there. There's all kinds of funky stuff. We basically gutted the whole thing
Yeah.
right now. We under a demolition permit just to find out what was there. And there's was possible, 3 or 4 units at one time. There was a potential renovation for a more modernized unit in this corner over here.
Yeah.
But hasn't been occupied in a long time.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So what the main thing that we're doing is, this project is really a shell project. So besides making shelled commercial spaces and making apartments upstairs, we also are treating the shell of the building. And so it's pretty much on Main Street where the whole facade is going to be gutted and redone. This right now is the new stairway that is the new lobby that will go up to the apartments on the second floor. And this will be a new storefront for the building next to the facade. And then this is the storefront for the building on the corner. This is all going to be aluminum glass frame, as is sort of there now. We had that the portion that was Greenfield Games was really falling apart in a bad way, and we were a little worried about safety of the public, and so that's why we took down the glass, some of the plate glass that was up there, and covered that with plywood. Never got painted, but hopefully we'll just move straight into construction. So aluminum glass storefront. The second floor on Main Street remains what it is now, which is kind of a whitewashed brick. Coming around on Chapman Street, there's quite a bit of changes that we're doing. Right now, you can see the white windows. Looks like 4 or 5 windows that are existing on the second floor. There's no windows on the first floor. And that was when the first incarnation that we brought before the planning board for this. One of the things that they were going to be very interested in was putting windows on Chapman Street, so you didn't have this like blank wall as you're walking down. So it made it more pleasant. So we're taking some elements of what we're doing on the front, and we're going to be making sort of punched windows along on that ground floor. In addition to that, as we're adding new space upstairs, and that new space has to meet residential standard code standards. We have and one of those standards is that bedroom windows have to be you have to be able to escape out of a bedroom window. So we're adding larger windows, wider windows that meet the code along our building. So this is on. We're going to take off the right now. There's like 2 kinds of siding. There's a wider composite siding on the lower level, and then just aluminum siding on the top. That is getting stripped off of the second floor. The entire backside, which is pretty nasty, is getting stripped off, and we'll be doing all of that. We'll have one siding that'll wrap around the Chapman and the back entrance inside, cleaning that all up. We're building new second means of egress out of the 2 commercial spaces, and then we also have the stairway coming down from the second floor. So there would be some decks with stairs to get you out of the building. It's pretty much the project. Yes.
Could you explain who the owner is, who the developer, are you representing the developer?
I'm the architect.
Yeah, okay.
I'm representing the owner.
Who's the owner?
The owner is Frank Sid. He is a investor from, he's from Florida. But I've done work with him in, Holyoke. We did a project for him there. He bought the building, and this was just a little bit of history. First thing he was to do cannabis dispensary in this, we actually have a planning board approval to do that, which we have to modify. So, and Frank was like, well, I want to do residential too. So when he purchased the building from the previous owners, he says he wanted to include that, the residential as a piece of it.
And do you have any renderings of the facade? Will it be similar to the comparison with the historic facades in here, or is it going to be different?
We're going to rebuild the cornice along the front. It's kind of there now. There was some pull-out canopies that were kind of buried under that. And we are, there's similar, architrave that block. You can see a little bit of a profile of what we plan to do at the front. So it's pretty substantial. Yeah. Even the whitewashed brick above as it is, we're taking the existing glass entrance that's there now, gutting all of that, and we're building new, and then that the whole different look at that Greenfield glass, Greenfield games, getting a constant Greenfield will match this, so that it'll be the two sides will match in there. It's going to be aluminum glass.
Let me ask you, is what you're showing there equivalent to the plans we have?
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, we had these,
We have the plan, so-
About you.
no, we had these,
Not true.
we had these to refer to, so I just wanted to double check that. Okay, plan board members, questions?
Sure.
I think it's great to you adding some housing upstairs. Good luck with retail. And what's accomplished. One thing that stands out to me is the fact you're not adding windows to the second floor Main Street. So, because to me, that building is a blank. Nothing. It's good that you're adding windows on the sides, but it'd be even better if we could see illuminated residential windows upstairs. You don't know there's residential in there unless they happen to be standing on the courtyard. It's cool that you do in the courtyard too. Why can't you punch a few windows into the brick facade on the front?
Sure, we could. In fact, we may need to.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to
Yeah.
do that. Again,
Okay.
for the Jeff's point of view, it'd be nice to see lights on downtown at night, sort of thing.
Yeah.
People occupying residential places, make people feel comfortable. I,
So does this, could you put another dispensary in there? Do you have the right to do that?
Sure.
Yeah.
We have to go before the board. to get it
How
approved.
many dispensaries do we have in Greenfield?
I don't want to get into too much of a back and forth. There is a limit on the number of dispensaries, and just to be clear, as Eric tried to point, it was the ZBA that approves the dispensary, not the planning. So, but I did want to, it's a very long agenda, and I want to be aware of everybody's time and energy level, so don't mean to cut you off.
hear from,
But that is, I know that's an issue.
public works regarding storage.
Yes,
Why did you go with aluminum? Doesn't aluminum bend easily with the windows that you said? I mean, the wind blows through Main Street quite hard, and I just think that aluminum isn't very strong, is it?
You can, aluminum is strong.
Yeah.
And aluminum and glass windows storefront that we would do would certainly meet any requirements for wind loading. So,
Kinnear is a good product.
Yeah, I'm gonna focus now on the planning board so we can try to move this forward to conclusion. You mentioned decks and
I'm sorry.
decks, did you say?
Back in the back.
Oh, yeah.
The one in the back.
Not here. Here and here.
Oh, on the first floor level.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's a-
okay,
No, it's not a,
Okay.
it's not a deck for the apartments.
got it,
It's just a porch.
got it. I was trying to understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One other question about the ground floor storefront glass. You indicate it's darkened or tinted,
Tinted one side, yeah.
still transparent?
That's yes, that is a artifact of the cannabis.
So right now, it's probably not gonna be tinted?
Yes.
Okay, so that was my question.
The glass will not be tinted anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it will not be tinted in the glass
Maybe you have the film to reply.
film. It would be an applied film.
Can't see inside.
You can see inside.
There's some retail downtown you can't see inside, and that doesn't. Might be one reason why no one goes in them and doesn't contribute enough to the light.
Yeah. They would love to have it wide open.
Peter,
I'm very excited.
just want to check with you if you had any thoughts, questions or comments?
No questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to briefly go through the site plan review portion of the zoning ordinance. We're going to be shortly talking about that in detail anyway, so that would be helpful to frame this. First, you always go for any section of the zoning ordinance to the purpose. The purpose of site plan review is to ensure that new development conforms to the requirements of this ordinance and is designed in a manner which reasonably protects the visual, environmental, and aesthetic qualities of the neighborhood and the city. As was mentioned, any site containing more than one principal use comes under site plan review. And there are 11 approval guidelines. Number one is provision of integrating the project into the existing terrain and surrounding landscape by minimizing use of wetlands, steep slopes, and hilltops, protecting visual amenities and scenic views, preserving unique natural and historic features, minimizing tree vegetation and soil removal, and minimizing grade changes. Obviously, this applies to a lot of different sites. Number two, the use of landscaping to establish buffers between incompatible land uses and to screen unsightly features. Three, the provision of open spaces and pedestrian amenities available to the public. Four, the arrangement of access points, service roads, driveways, parking areas, lighting, and pedestrian walkways in a manner which maximizes the convenience and safety of pedestrian and vehicular movement within the site and in relation to adjacent ways. Five, ease of access, travel, and on-site movement for fire and police equipment and other emergency services or public safety. Six, provision for underground placement of utilities. Seven, provisions for surface runoff and drainage, which protects the site and adjacent properties from erosion, maximizes groundwater recharge through low impact development, stormwater techniques, and prevents the collection of surface runoff on paved surfaces which may obstruct pedestrian or vehicular flow. Eight, the siting of building structures and open spaces to permit maximum use of passive solar energy, to permit maximum protection from adverse impacts of winds, vapors, or other emissions, shadows, and noise, and to provide for adequate light, air, and circulation. Nine, protection of historic features and design which does not detract from properties in the area. 10, measures to prevent pollution of surface or groundwater and to prevent increased flooding. 11, compliance with parking, loading, dimensional performance standards, and all other sections of this ordinance. So just wanted to go through those, and obviously the majority of those are not relevant to this reuse of this site. One specific thing I wanted to touch on, we recently had a substantive discussion about accessibility. And I know you were talking about access. Obviously, the apartments are not accessible. Someone with a physical disability, movement, physical disability. But you were talking about access to, the stores. And I wanted to ask what's the nature of that? I know that sometimes in the past, the, planning board has advocated for having, electric, access
Lift,
buttons.
but lifts, he's putting lifts in the front.
Well, yeah, I think you're talking about it, we are providing lifts, but what you're talking about is mechanically operable doors.
Correct.
Yeah, so I can say that the new building code that's coming out is making that mandatory. That is always an issue that we grapple with because there's two things that are fighting against each other. And one is there's a requirement on a pull for a handicapped accessible entrance door that has to meet a certain maximum pull force to get into the building. They also, in a windy location, the closers always have trouble. If you turn the closer down so that it's easily accessible, lots of times the door just stays wide open the whole time because the wind is keeping it that way. The solution for that is a mechanically operated door. So I can say that we actually had that discussion with the building inspector when we brought this through the building. That's what we are going to be including those.
Excellent. Thank you. And Eric, I know you had, this word run by a few departments. Share what the feedback was, please.
Sure. Just for the audience's information, so as part of the site plan review process, we have to transmit all the application materials to key departments and boards for their comment. And that includes the engineering superintendent, fire prevention officer, health director, inspector of buildings, Department of Planning and Development, Commission on Disability Access for any site that is the public will access. So we received comments back. All those were received, we transmitted the copy of the application. We received comments back from fire prevention officer, engineering superintendent, and Department of Planning and Development, who all had no issues or concerns with this project.
Thank you.
The plans were well done. Steve does a great job.
Could you say anything about the lighting?
I think we'd chosen the lighting before these. I mean, we have sort of two kinds of light. We have the lighting that is providing emergency lighting, which is just going to be a wall mounted light that is only shining down along. And that is being added at the back at all the entrance exits and also on Chapman Street and then also on the front. So that's there. We also are going to have some decorative lighting that will be all the entrances are recessed slightly. And so we have, down lights in the soffits over these doors for all of those lights. That's pretty much it.
So are these security lights, exterior lights always on? Like,
No,
turn on when there's
no.
a fire.
Yeah, I mean, they had the ones at the back will certainly be on a motion sensor so that, they'll come on when somebody exits the building, the light will come on. Or if somebody that shouldn't be there is around the back, the light will come on a motion, but they will be off. Otherwise, they'll be on a timer. So
they will be on the night.
no, well, they're on the timer could be on from 6 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock at night in the winter until 8 o'clock or something like that. It's something that we can set and you can tell us what you want.
So the lights along Chapman Street will be on when it's dark.
Yes. But not on in the middle of the night, if that's what you're.
What's the standard in town? And streetlights are on when it's dark.
There's streetlights down that street.
Yeah, streetlights are on all night, of course. typically the lights should go off by, there might be something in the ordinance about 11 p.m. Unless.
10 or 11, that's kind of
24 hour. I mean, there are approvals for 24 hour.
If there are, when most people would be walking by in the evening,
Yes.
so it feel safer, okay?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The lights will be on at that time.
You said they're down facing,
Yes,
not contributing to light pollution.
no. They're hooded, shielded, so that they're very much directed down.
Other questions or comments from the board? Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
Move to approve, that was it.
Point of order, George. Did we get a transmittal from the historical commission, being as how it's in the historical district? I was just at a historical meeting like about an hour ago, so it just came to mind. Thank you.
Stephanie? Eric, did this?
Actually, historical commission reviewed this project right before this planning board meeting.
Oh,
I ran
okay.
into the chair on
Yeah.
that. They didn't mention anything about it.
No, didn't mention a word.
Didn't mention a word, but they were reviewing it right before this meeting.
Okay, timely.
Second the motion to approve.
And let me just check, were there any conditions? I know you had brought up the issue about the second floor windows on Main Street.
Yeah, on the basis of, well, we have to, yes,
I'm happy to.
at least one or two
have that
per unit.
included. Yeah,
And then if we control this or not, but not having opaque windows in the storefronts.
yes.
You want to add those both as conditions?
Yes, two conditions.
Well, was that a condition of the people who wanted to rent it? And if it's rented to them, will they put that condition back on their rental?
That's a good question. That's a question for you.
Yeah, so that, the thing was, I think that the cannabis shop that wanted to have it wanted that tinted.
I know.
So we're gonna say no tinted windows?
Well, I don't, yeah, but there's a conflict there because it's required for that use. To not be able to see
So
it.
that's the question.
So because this is not a hearing for cannabis dispensary and it's site plan review for
Yeah.
office space by right. You can condition that, and if they go back before the ZBA for a dispensary, then the condition would have to be that they have to be opaque.
Yeah.
Great. So there would be,
That's why we actually talked about this. It was Eric's suggestion that we didn't combine. So we have two separate hearings, you know, this one is very specifically to get the construction underway. So we can clean up Main Street and Chapman and deal with, you know, what you see before you. And then there's going to be a second
So
ZBA.
can we say something like, there's no two tinted windows unless the use requires it? So somebody else can't put it on there?
I would just say you could say no tinted windows.
I think that's.
And then it would, if that did happen, it would override it.
Okay,
Yes.
Definitely.
there we go.
Exactly. And can you repeat, Jeff, the condition on windows,
So
Second floor.
second floor windows?
each, I
On
don't know
Main
if I can
Street.
say how many should be there. I mean, you have. It's just one plan apart.
I get two windows.
There's one bed, two bedrooms, a closet It seems like-
How about two rooms, two windows?
per room or per unit. I mean, per, yeah, I
It's
guess,
the same thing.
yeah.
I probably will,
How many, yeah, which,
well, I'll probably like to do paired windows.
Yeah.
You know, just to give it a little more oomph. And that's kind of like what we're doing down below. Dress that house a little bit better upstairs.
there's meaning in total of four.
Yeah. You know, two windows apiece.
That sounds good, yes.
Yeah, it does.
So. Four windows across the second floor facade,
On Main Street.
on the, yeah, the Main Street facade. And no opaque protected storefront windows.
Now, one other question. Now, if we're gonna put windows out there, I see you've got the spot for the signs. I'm assuming that the sign should not be either internally illuminated or uplight illuminated that doesn't, so it doesn't shine into the windows of the now new bedroom.
That will be. There, it's
Right.
neon. We're gonna have neon.
Okay, so we gotta,
Just kidding. It'll be, well, I mean, you know, I
That's a big
would
turn on.
imagine, I mean, we're allowed to do backlit signs.
yes,
And that would probably be I mean, a lot of towns objected backlit signs, but in this particular case, that would be the best.
I guess it'd be okay as long as the shield, the frame of the sign extends beyond the glass so that the light doesn't.
Yep.
That'd be fine.
Yeah.
That's good.
And you're seconding the motion with
Yes,
those two.
motion to approve with the condition we just stuck on.
I think it'd be better if the living rooms were on Main Street, but I get the layout that's like. I can't control your interior, but. That would,
We can't control it.
I know that, yeah.
It's beating us to death.
It's nice to see it,
Yeah,
particularly market
those
face.
fancy conditions.
Any further planning board deliberation on this motion? Two conditions. Hearing none, all.
I don't have any
planning board-
deliberation, just a comment to,
Please.
Oh.
Go ahead, Peter.
sorry. No, I was just gonna, there's a little internet lag, I guess, but I was just gonna compliment Steve on his well thought out plans and drawings and presentation, and just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for all the visits you did to our building, Peter. All that year, we had the fire alarm.
Never a problem.
We finally got past it.
All planning board members in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck. Very excited.
So next. Thank you very much.
Here.
There, in the planning boards, because the planning board, condition, the local property manager for set like this.
I've never heard of that. No, local.
I mean, for a Florida owner, it concerns me that if they haven't designated a local property manager, that could be something important for the tenants and for that business. Or to the town, to have somebody who's available to fix the lights when they go out, et cetera. This makes me concerned that I didn't hear him say anything. Is that something to bring up to the ZBA?
Eric, do you have any precedent or sense of that?
I've been here for 17 and a half years and that never such a condition was ever placed or even discussed.
No. New ground, a new idea. Thank you all. So the next,
Is that what, that's not an answer.
we said we've never heard of it
Yeah, I know.
before, so I,
That's really not substantive. The question is, should we be looking at
sure.
to protect the people of the town and the people in the building? That this man designate a property manager
Sure.
that's based in Massachusetts.
Speaking for myself, I would say I'm always open to hearing new ideas, but I wouldn't, it's on the agenda. We can't entertain that as a substantive topic tonight. And it's something that we'd have to research further to find out precedent and stuff like that. So
I can respond to it. To me, the site plan review focuses on the design and the layout of the building based on the criteria that George read, not the use. You're talking about the use of the building. That's a special permit question. This is a site plan.
So you're saying it's a ZBA question,
I'm saying it's a special permit question.
but that would be at the ZBA.
If they're the,
Or would you get it?
depends on who's the authority under a special permit for a project.
Special permit.
you planted a seed, but we should move on now. So you brought up an interesting point. We listened. And so we're going to move on. We have a lot of agenda items to get through. So this next is the set of now four proposed zoning amendments. There had been 5 and 1 we passed at the November meeting. And these are to allow multifamily dwellings by right with site plan review.
This is not a public hearing. This is not a public hearing for June 10th.
Sorry,
The action items are not public hearings.
that's correct. They're not public hearings.
Just so people know that.
Yes, I think I made a clear distinction between
Okay.
public hearing and what is not. Again, to allow multifamily dwellings by right with site plan review in the semi-residential zoning district. That's number 1. Second is to raise the maximum number of units per building allowed in new multifamily dwelling. And with that, Eric, I want to turn to you because we had at the last meeting, we had talked about there was an additional proposal that had been going through the Economic Development Committee of the council. And that was different than the one we had before us. And I wondered if you could offer some clarification on that.
I think it was Councilor John Garrett that submitted a revised, based on the last meeting, a multifamily dwelling subsection B4. He submitted a proposal to strike subsection B4 in its entirety, as previously discussed by the board. Board didn't make a decision on it, but discussed it. And was willing to consider that. And so they moved forward with this proposed revised amendment to, instead of going from 24 to 50 and 6 to 10 per entranceway, he's suggesting or proposing an amendment to eliminate the subsection in its entirety.
Okay, that's what had been, and that was discussed that was going to go before the EDC on November 12th, I think, and that meeting didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
So, okay. So at this point, there are two differing proposals. I'm not sure which one is officially in the pipeline for us to consider a recommendation.
I wish I could say that I was less confused than you are, but unfortunately, I'm just as confused as you are on how these move forward.
That had to do with the limitation of the number of units. It just struck all the language of limited units.
I understand that, but in the process of how these were brought forth for your consideration at this point is a little confusing, even for me, because it was typically the planning board initiates most zoning amendments in the city of Greenfield throughout time. And and now it's a lot of citizen petition zoning articles and city council initiatives, which is good, but different process and different ways to initiate it. So the confusion is that the board is working with Councilor Garrett and the city council on these amendments originally proposed but then initiated by the board, but then now initiated by the city council for the amendment. So it's very confusing. I don't have a direct, clear answer for you, unfortunately.
I mean, to be clear, there are 5 ways that zoning amendments can be proposed.
By the regional council of governments, by the zoning board of appeals, by the planning board, by the city council, and by a citizen petition.
And the only issue here is if it's whoever it's proposed by, having clear what the proposal is. And if it starts shifting, that can make complications like
Can make complications. If you're started a zoning amendment process and then in the middle of it, change language significantly, usually a new public hearing has to be held on the proposal.
Thank you. That was my concern about that. The third item is proposed amendments to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance to meet the Affordable Homes Act signed by Governor Moore Healy. And this was something where there were two options that would be, or two proposals. One was coming for the board here to, and was this initiated, Eric, by, who was this initiated by?
So Garrett.
Councilor Garrett initiated the proposed amendments on ADUs
Okay.
prior
Yeah.
to Governor Healy's law being adopted, the Affordable Homes Act. And with the Affordable Homes Act, we had to respond to meet the new law.
Yep.
So I wrote that ordinance up based on guidance from different organizations like Mass Municipal Association. And so the ordinance I wrote up is currently before you for consideration. It didn't actually include one provision from the citizen petition, which is a prohibition on short-term rentals for ADUs. I believe that was a good idea. But the language I put forth, the purpose of it is to meet the new law. And that's all it did. didn't come into factor, other things like bulk requirements or other ways to control ADUs if you want to control them or limit them or whatever desire is, but my amendments were just strictly to meet the requirements of the new law, which I believe if once our attorney reviews it, he's going to say that, yes, this meets the new law as written.
And again, because these things can get a little convoluted sometimes, at the last planning board meeting, Councilor Bullock, chairs the Economic Development Committee, was saying that was not on the agenda for the 12th, for November 12th, that their intention was their conclusion was premature, and they wanted to see if the state was going to give further guidance, further flexibility about this, and to hold off on those. So they were not planning to bring that forward to the council.
Correct.
But then that meeting didn't happen. But that was the intention.
That was the intention.
With the board.
Correct.
Okay.
So the additional guidance from the state would be a great thing to understand how bulk regulations can come into play, what our limits are, what can we do as a community. Like I said, I just wrote this up to meet the new law as written now, so that our laws and our ordinances can compliance with the.
And that was that was in collaboration with Councilor Garrett's effort to initiate that.
His initiation had nothing to do with the new law. It was just to allow ADUs by right. And then this came into play right in the middle of it. So we had to meet the new law. But his initial initiation of it was to consider ADUs by right and not by special permit.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, I want the board to understand that this morning, the EDC chair told me very clearly, her committee will not take this up in December. That the motion that came out of the last meeting with the EDC and the planning board was that we would wait in abeyance for the state to issue reasonable regulations that local municipalities could adopt. And she said to me, where did you hear that this would be on the agenda for either the city council, the EDC, or the anything at this council level? And I said to her, it's in your chair's report from the 3rd of December. She said it is not going to be considered in December. So I would urge you to just continue this issue. And we're not prepared to talk about it tonight. She was saying it will not come up at the council in December. The ordinance, as you know, it takes effect. The statute takes effect early February, and we're all expecting. She says she's been in contact many times now with the state. They're expecting some guidance. I would recommend that the planning board not pass either or take any action on either of these ordinances regarding ADUs because it is still premature.
What you're saying is in alignment with what I was just sharing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was saying as well.
So I wanted to go through these and offer the unfortunate complications or perhaps necessary considerations before we get to a discussion further. And then the fourth is to allow medical centers / clinics by right in the central commercial zoning district. So those are the four options. Let me turn to the board before we get into further discussion, just to clarify if we're taking one or two of these out of consideration for tonight. So this ADU situation seems to be.
Yeah, well, that's already been tabled at the last meeting, our joint meeting. So I assume we would just abide by that because we got the word from EDC. They were not going to do anything. They were going to wait. So we were just going to follow step with them and just wait. So I'm not sure why it showed up on the agenda. But I thought that was agreed at the last meeting to just wait until the state came back with further information.
Well, I think we were waiting to hear further from the EDC or something. So we're just following the process.
Right.
So,
That's
but
No, we'd have that by now.
let me ask the board, is there any objection to passing on this for the time being and seeing how it proceeds further?
I do know that the state's made it clear they're not going to push that deadline. It's not going to move. And they also recognize that creates a bit of a tension because it's hard to change your zoning that fast, but it is what it is. It was an act of the legislature. They can't modify that. So we should just make sure we have a chance to take action before the EDC takes action, so we can weigh in. So if they're waiting until January, I mean, is there time to get guidance, rewrite it, have more public hearings, do all those things before early February, given where we stand today and given the suggestion that the EDC is going to wait till January to bring it back up?
Eric has rewritten it, told
It's-
it's been ready to go. Based
Well,
on the state,
So let me clarify
one
again,
change.
the amendments that I did will meet the state law, but there's other considerations. There's citizen initiated amendments that want to regulate it in different ways, bulk requirements and that you can do. So further guidance from the state will be great to understand what are the limits of the board on revising this ordinance. This, what I did just meets the law. It will meet the law. It'll pass right now. But will it restrict it in further ways or different ways that other people want to do? No, it's not in there yet.
And it's moot if we're making a recommendation or something, the council won't take under advisement to act on, so.
So, it'd be good to understand, just to get the guidance and to be able to just maybe not even touch it, but just be able to respond. Here's what we learned from the regulations.
We should consult and confer with the EDC and council to get some clarity.
Yes.
But to the technical question of the time frame is how late could it be to meet the?
Well, February 2nd is the official date of the law. So February 2nd, say you're a town and you have a town meeting. How are they going to get that done before February? They can't, because they have town meetings in May.
Mhm.
So there's going to be an issue for those types of communities, but for cities with, that meet monthly or even more often, it's going to be tight. I don't know if we can even do it before February 2nd, but
Mhm.
it could be done probably in February, but not by the 2nd. And is the state going to knock on our door and say, hey, you're 2 weeks late? No.
Eric, one thing you're saying is that what you wrote, at least as far as we know, the limited amount of information they gave us is compliant with our interpretation of the law.
Yes.
But we might get some added nuance that might cause us to want to tweak it a little bit.
If the board wants to consider these other proposed amendments to limit it or whatever the wording is to regulate it in further detail, then we would need those state regulations to understand what the limits are and what can we do.
And the other proposal is the citizen's petition.
That's what I'm talking about, citizen
There's
petition.
two options. We could wait to see if the state guidance helps us understand whether or not the citizen's petition is compliant.
That's what I'm trying to say right there.
And I can assure you that the citizen's petition is not compliant. It's.
I don't believe it's compliant either. I believe that they're going to strike that down and say, no, you cannot do that.
Right. So we could just act on the one that we have. Also, then at least we have something that we know is compliant. We can always modify it later, but the biggest risk would be to just have a void where we don't have any rule. Because in that period of time, there's nothing controlling it beyond, is that correct? I mean, beyond what we have, to the extent that we have is compliant.
But to wait for the regs and, it'd be nice to be able to say, here's why the citizen petition proposed amendments doesn't meet the new law. We could wait to say that and just adopt the one that we know, once we find out all the information, maybe the state will say that they're allowed, but in my opinion, based on what I've heard so far, it's probably not going to be allowed.
To me, information is power, and we want to know the maximal amount of local control we can have, and then we can make a decision or recommendation about that. So if there is going to be some timely additional guidance from the state, I think it's worth doing and trying to get it, like you say, in February, just so we're.
Yeah, I think the state's going to come out very soon. They know that the February 2nd is deadline and cities and towns have to adopt these quickly. So they're moving quick to get these regulations out, guidance for the communities.
I think if you're comfortable with that, just procedurally, then it seems reasonable to me, to George's point, just to make sure we have as much information and we're still moving along quick enough to do our best to hit the deadline. And we're also in sync with the EDC, which is also kind of running slow.
Exactly. And these came out quickly.
I'm sorry to be rude, guys. I've had information I wanted to share about this. I talked to Councilor Bullock at 4:30, 5 o'clock. So I'm assuming that's after.
Excuse me a second, John. I just wanted you to introduce yourself and your role. You're welcome to speak. But
Yeah,
for people who may
and I'm
not know
sorry,
you-
I've been trying not to interrupt you guys, although there have been
Yep.
folks
You're,
interrupting.
you're
but
asking for permission to
Yep.
speak, not interrupting, and I'm granting you permission
Thank you.
under the
I appreciate it.
circumstance. Yep.
So my name is John Garrett. I live at 93 Hope Street. I'm on the city council, and I am obviously involved with the zoning amendments. As far as the ADUs are concerned, being discussed at EDC this month, that probably is going to happen. I had a conversation with Councilor Bullock where, well, just full disclosure, my wife and I just welcomed a child into our family, and we weren't sure when that kid was going to be born. And a big piece of maybe not talking about ADUs this month was basically because, this is something that we've been working on for a long time, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it. There was absolutely the concerns about the state guidance. Councilor Bullock and I attended an executive office of housing and livable communities, I think that's what it's called, meeting with the ADU coordinator, and she made it very, very clear to us that the deadline is not going to change. I expressed my preferences to Councilor Bullock today that we have this discussion, we have this vote, regardless of the future guidance. The clock has started ticking as far as this proposal. I know last month at the public hearing, she described wanting to let it die on the vine so we could get back and do it right. I've also spoken to, well, in any case, it's not a dead letter for this month for EDC. And I just thought that was an important bit of information to clarify here. If the planning board, personally, I would love guidance from the planning board about how they feel about this proposal. And if we find out between now and next week that there's brand new information hot off the presses, then maybe we do let it die on the vine and change it to something that, reflects the amount of local control we have. But frankly, this has been a conversation we've been having since June about these kind of amendments. And so there's a lot to do as far as planning in the city. And my personal preference would be for you guys to come to some sort of conclusion about this proposal, regardless of future guidance. So that's, again, sorry for interrupting. And again, thank you, George, for the permission to speak. I appreciate it and all the work that you folks are doing.
So George, you've just heard two versions of what the EDC chairman has said in the morning and in the afternoon. She's not here. What's going on here? I mean, does she have some guidance for you or not? You got one counselor telling you, I talked to her.
Thank you, Al, and thank you, John. Thoughts from the planning board?
Well, I just want to ask a question to just to completely clarify my mind on special permit.
Yes.
The use of the use that is being proposed is already an approved use in the zoning board, and they're getting a special permit for what purpose?
Currently, the regulations require a special permit from the planning board for detached ADUs. But that goes against the new law the governor passed.
Okay.
So it has to be changed.
So it's not an approved use?
The use of an ADU is in the ordinance, yes.
So it is our laws and our.
Yes,
So
adopted in like
an
2012.
EDU is an approved use on a piece of property. The special permit is there, why?
Special permit is there because the powers to be felt for the city of Greenfield, the special permit was the best way to permit the detached ADU.
So it's permitting a permitted use.
See, the governor's new law is saying this.
No, don't worry about the government.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand special permits from where we are. An ADU is an approved use in the town of Greenfield.
When you say approved, you mean a listed use in the zoning
You
ordinance.
can build one, and you can build an ADU in Greenfield. But you
If you go through the.
need a permit for a permitted use. You need a permit for an approved use.
Yeah, because you can either be by right or you can build it without a special permit, or it's allowed on the condition that you go through the special permit process.
Detached only. Detached only.
Please, Al, we can carry, please, Al, please be civil and respectful.
That's why it's there.
I think it's there because people
Not
want more,
Well, input. People want to have input and say.
want more ways to regulate and oversight those types of things. It's not uncommon to have special permit requirements on detached ADUs across the country.
Okay.
But that's now not allowed in Massachusetts in February. So one of the major changes proposed is to be compliant with the legislation, remove that special permit requirement and just make it by right for detached.
I don't see that we have any choice on that. That's
That's
the
correct.
state. If the state's going to mandate that, then we cannot supersede the state. We can't say, no, we're going to do it anyway.
And the risk of having
That.
a zoning ordinance that's not compliant with the state laws, people don't have to follow your zoning ordinance anymore.
Correct. So I don't think we have any choice on that. So that's a simple, okay.
So,
That answer your questions?
It does, no, it does. I mean, just in general, we have all these special permit things. I'm just trying to understand, if we allow a store to be built, why do we need a special permit for that store to be built? I mean, it's more of a use thing than a structure thing.
special permits for uses that are
But
not allowed by right.
it's fine, that's fine. Okay, good, okay. So I don't know if we have any choice. I think we go move ahead with our revised ordinance, which is compliant with the state's ordinance.
So I would agree. So based on whether we don't, I mean, just in case the EDC acts on this in December, this is our chance to weigh in. Based on what we know about the law, we feel that we have a compliant ordinance option. We also have a citizen's petition option, which based on just looking at the wording of that and the wording of what we do have from the state, it's unambiguously non-compliant. So we should I think we should vote tonight to approve the version that Eric helped draft.
Comply, which we'd always go back and look at the citizens petition, if there's some leeway in the state guidelines that allows us to incorporate some of those things.
Yes. I think most of I think it's already pretty
That's
black
what
and
we
white. Then, we've covered our bases, we've given the counselors the guidance that they've asked for. And if it needs to change for reasons that the state tells us, we then can deliberate.
We deliberate and change it based on their guidelines.
Yeah.
But right now we move forward with I agree. I don't think we have any choice.
So in the proposed, the one that you drafted, the owner occupied is eliminated. The special permit is eliminated. Those could be in.
And just to be clear, this is only for people who want to have an ADU on their property, to put one on their property. There's been a lot of miscommunication, misinformation about this. Joan, I know you were concerned about people being able to put ADUs on your property and you having to put the cost of that. That's not ever going to be allowed. This is just for people who want to put one on their own property. Otherwise, you don't have to have one on your property. But it doesn't threaten your property. That clears up. I remember you asked that question before, so I just wanted to say that.
Why was there such a miscommunication then?
I think it's a confusing issue and I try to be clear about it when I talk about it.
To be clear, the other changes would be about the off-street parking. Is not required for an ADU within 1/2 mile of a commuter rail station or bus station. And something that's not required by the state, but was in this draft, is D11, accessory dwelling units shall not be used for short-term rentals.
We know we can put in that regulation.
We can put that
That's
in.
clear from what we got from the state.
So I want to because again, we've been going back and forth about these things, refer back to the citizen petition. Says equal standing.
Before you switch over to that one, did you also mention the owner occupied?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay, I was reading while you were talking. Sorry about that. Okay.
So, the not be used for short-term rentals was one of the components of the citizen petition. In other words, that the addition of a accessory dwelling unit should not be total land area of a parcel submitted for an accessory dwelling unit being added, shall not be less than 1/2 of an acre. And that the net acreage of total land in a parcel minus all dwellings, including the proposed ADU, internal roads, driveways, or other buildings or developments shall be considered open space and shall comprise at least 50% of the parcel. And all ADUs shall meet the minimum setback requirements for the district in which it is located. That latter one, Eric, that's not a question, right? It's about the setback requirements. Those apply.
The setback requirements of our existing ordinance apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all our.
So there are 4 things in the citizen petition. One doesn't apply because it's not needed because the setback requirements are already adhered to.
Yes.
And the short-term rental has been added in here.
Right.
So the 2 things are limited to, or saying it has to be more than 1/2 an acre and about the 50% requirement. So those are things that could be potentially added in
It
here.
can't be.
Those two, I believe, would never be approved.
Let me finish if I could. Those are things that could potentially be added in here. And the question would be, would that be adherent? Would that be a local adjustment that the state would not find acceptable?
Yeah, we can
So-
approve a law that's not compliant. Or just to be clear. So I guess to your point, we could incorporate that rule knowing that it's not compliant. There's municipalities in the state that have done that and they're in court with the state. I don't
Well,
know.
is there anything specific in the law that would be contradicting? Is the half an acre requirement?
The intent of the whole intent of why the governor did this, that goes against it.
It's restrictive. You're becoming restrictive on
She-
something
she
that
did it
they're
for this
trying not
purpose.
to restrict.
So it's not explicitly contradicting, but the interpretation is it would be seen as too restrictive of this option they're trying to make more possible.
The legal opinion that I've heard is that you
No, this
can,
is hearsay.
No, I'm gonna come, excuse me, Al. I'm gonna give members of the public a chance to speak, but interrupting is not, please respect that process.
You can't. have
Please
members say
respect-
The legal opinion.
Al, please respect this process. It's
I
really,
would like you to respect our process as well as citizenship.
people have a chance to speak. I'm gonna get to the abundant emails I got from people.
Go ahead.
the attorney Jonathan Silverstein, permanent land use attorney in Massachusetts, who we work with in other projects in other places and across the state. It is told me that, and he's involved in many communities across the state dealing with the same exact issue because there's hundreds of communities, they're all trying to figure this out together. His opinion in advising other cities on how to get an ordinance that's as close to possible as compliant with the legislation is that, and there's other, I could pull up what he told me. There's a legal precedent for this that he's referencing, or you can't make the new law more restrictive. You can't make having an ADU be more restrictive than just having a house. It's a by right use. Like it should be treated like having a garage or something. So you can't have a different lot area requirement for a house with an ADU that you have for a house without an ADU, for example. So those two rules you read are more restrictive for properties with ADUs than properties without. Therefore, it wouldn't fly in his opinion.
Makes sense.
It's one legal opinion. Okay,
Yes.
thanks. Okay, is there more?
Another person wants to speak.
I have more information on this from a meeting. that-
Yep, I'm gonna get to.
No, I'm just saying that I was in a meeting with EOA, HLC, which I will never get straight.
Would you
With their
please-
lawyers, we're
would you
trying to. I
hold
just
on that?
want to say there's more
Please, just
legal
hold.
information, that's all.
Please hold on.
That's
Thank
all.
you. So, okay, thank you. Is there, from the board, is there any other thoughts about this at the moment before we get into, we've got quite a bit of correspondence from the public wanted to touch on. And then see if people who are here, because some people who sent correspondence may be here. Hearing none.
Well, George, I'll just, if the legal, if I'm not a lawyer, the legal argument doesn't fly. I think it just personally doesn't make sense to make ADUs more restrictive in those ways. Because it just makes it harder to build ADUs, and ADUs are part of the solution to our housing problem in Greenfield.
I'm going to try to go through these, focusing on the ADUs. I wanted to first mention, someone had, it's been pointed out by a few people about referencing emails that we got from people, and that tends to be our practice. And last month, there were several people who had sent in emails, but also spoke. And then I realized that there were a couple of people I was remiss in not getting to referencing a couple. I'm not going to read them in their entirety because some are quite long. This was from Patrick Devlin, didn't want to, there should be strenuous controls with the removal by the state regarding the ADUs, removal of special permit, but it should be notified, and value in open space, distance, reference in the distance from the main house, the ADU, at least one should be owner occupied. Want to have minimum lot size. Marie Francois, and she said that she supports all of the zoning amendments. Yes, and the amendments. Because before us, we need more accessible lodging in Greenfield. This week, we got from Rob Catlin. That was about, I think it's mostly about multifamily dwellings, so I'm gonna stick with the ADU at the moment, since that's what we're focused on. Not about the ADUs. Sorting these by on the ADU issue. A lot of these about the multifamily. Bledsoe wrote support of all the zoning amendments. Sam Weidergardner wrote and the requirement for 50% open space would have the impact of discouraging building of ADUs. And also recommended with regard to short-term rental that the duration of what that means be defined. He's recommending that in the 11. Couple that came in the late afternoon when both the library and Eric's printing shop were closed, so I didn't get a chance to print them out. So I think they were more about the other library issues, more generally not the ADUs. So that's the input we got. Is there anyone here who had something they wanted to say about the ADU? You can keep it brief and please come up so others can hear.
I have a more general thing, but I'll wait on that. My name is Susan Wergaptic. I live on Forest Avenue in Greenfield. I have attended 2 meetings with EOHLC about specifically the rules with the Attorney General's office about the rules involving ADUs. And in both of those meetings, and I might add that one of them had 600 people from municipalities in that meeting. We specifically brought up the question of the restrictions in the citizens petition. And we're told that if those requirements are more restrictive than what the zoning presently is, that they would not be in compliance. So, and that was from 2 attorneys from the Attorney General's office, as well as EOHLC. So I think we can assume, at least at this point, it could change. But at this point, the requests are not in compliance with the requirements of the law. If you'd like, I can do my general thing and then you can be rid of me.
No, rather stick to the ADU at the moment.
Okay, good enough.
Thank you. Anyone else about the ADU?
Yeah, I like this.
Yeah, if you would come up here, so people can hear on the mic. We're not going to hear the recording or it doesn't pick up as well if people are distant from the mic. Sorry for the awkwardness of it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Well,
Peter.
while Al comes up to the chair, there is a participant online with his hand up also.
Oh, thank you. It's hidden behind the record image. Thank you very much for pointing that out, Peter.
You have somebody who wants to talk?
No, go ahead. Peter.
Oh.
Go.
I would just caution the board not to be based on anything that the state says or some attorney says. You should go by what the state issues as what are reasonable regulations, not what's currently being discussed by attorneys. There could be legal ramifications of somebody saying, well, the Attorney General will be sued on that by X amount of communities because these are dimensional changes. What we proposed in that ordinance were dimensional issues about minimum lot size. And I would ask all of you to consider, and I hope you will. You tell me what a minimum lot size would be. Is there such a thing? If I live on point, 0.01 of an acre and I want to build an ADU, is there any such thing as a minimal lot size? We certainly said so when it had to do with open space. We said you can't play in open space unless you have 5 acres. Now on this, if we want to maintain open space, what's the difference between the 40% and 50% open space requirement? Why is that a big issue? And on the issue of 0.5%, 0.5 acre, no one has produced any information that's valid about how many 0.5 acres we have or why that isn't a dimensional limit. And I don't know if the AGs or people or the lawyers there who are making these comments at these public meetings impromptu, that may end up in a guidance. That may not. But why are you prejudging that? Oh no, saying this definitely is out of compliance because some lawyer said to me. If I told you the lawyers that I've talked to, I would be out of order, frankly. I think you want to wait until the state guidance comes out. We've told you we don't care about we only proposed this because Greenfield wasn't dealing at all with any of the reasonable regulation discretion that is built into the Affordable Homes Act. There is discretion for towns to have reasonable regulation. Why don't we just see what the compliance document is from the state, then have your hearing? If you want to pass tonight the bit about what we know is in compliance, such as it can't be owner occupied, et cetera. I don't really care. You can do it piecemeal, but all I'm saying is don't prejudge what you think of what 100 citizens submitted until you've seen the hard documents from the state, not what some lawyer told you at some meeting or what the people at the executive office of whatever said. I mean, I think it's just not appropriate. I don't think it's professional. Let's wait until we see it in writing and to see what they say, and then let's discuss it, because we haven't had a frank discussion with this board about, okay, what is a minimum lot? Are you gonna allow an ADU on a postage stamp size property? Is there such a thing as a lower limit? And in some neighborhoods, what would that look like? So all I want is a fair discussion. I think we deserve, the citizens that signed that petition deserve a fair discussion, and not have members at this point saying, I can tell you conclusively that it's not compliant. I just don't think that's appropriate. And I think that's a bad message for citizens to hear, because there has not been a real discussion about that ordinance that was proposed in all the questions that it raises. I just think, in fairness, Jeff, let's have that discussion. Certainly not tonight, because we don't have anything. All we have is innuendo. Somebody said. I want to see the guidance, and we don't have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Oh, I thought it was separate. Jimmy, you're on line there. If you could.
Same
introduce yourself.
household. I just kind of wanted to echo what Al said. I don't know why I'm such a geek, but I did watch the whole Milton case. And there's a lot of other communities besides Milton adding on to pushing back against the state's overreach on actually having us to enforce any zoning that's this like over aggressive on us. And there's many towns pushing it back about the MBTA community. I think the state was a little preemptive on this. Even when Joe Coniford came down, she even said, well, citizens, don't be worried. The state's going to come out with more guidance. And then you have people in the room pushing and saying that they already have the guidance. We haven't got any official guidance. So I'm kind of echoing what Al said. And there is a lot of pushback to this overreach of zoning. And I think we should look into why and who's doing it. And what the citizens want, like Al said. Also another point, really, that's about it. I really challenge people to go watch. It's right on YouTube. You can watch the whole court case about Milton and see how it goes through. You know, I take 45 minutes of my time to just be dismissed to watch that, and I don't even think anyone in the room has even really looked into the Milton case. So that would be nice. That's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. Oh, Mitch Spade, Chestnut Hill. I find this to be full of disingenuous and prejudice. We had a meeting several weeks ago with the working company. And you said that you were gonna set this aside until you get some guidance from the state. And now you're trying to circumvent the whole process and shove it down our throats tonight. Month and a half ago, I asked you to get Ed to the table. He hasn't shown up yet. What's the problem? He's the head of housing. He's reaching out to everyone else. Pick up the horn and get him here so that we can have an intelligent conversation about by right zoning. Okay? This guy is talking about his lawyers. You mentioned Patrick Devlin. Tell the full story about Patrick Devlin.
I don't want to get into.
No, give me a chance to speak.
No, I'm just saying.
I listen. I listen.
It's not about individuals. It's about.
Okay, we're talking about ADU.
Yeah.
Okay, Patrick was on this council at one time. When ADU got passed, who was the first abutter to take out a permit? Patrick's neighbor. How did he resolve it? With a lawsuit. Oh, no, now you want to shut me down. This is where this is heading. I'm not going to sit here or be a constituent in the city of Greenfield and allow you to diminish my rights or anyone else's rights here that are property owners. Now, if you want to try that, bring your gay game on. I'm ready for you. I'm tired of this nonsense. You bring people out here, they're coming here to address multi-dwellings, apartment buildings, and now you want to slip this under the table tonight.
Just about,
this is unfair.
right now, it's
George.
about the ADU.
Yeah, it's unfair. You shouldn't even brought this up tonight.
It's on the agenda.
People didn't know. Come on.
Agenda.
No, come on.
Agenda.
Bring Ed to the table. I welcome it. Okay? Bring him to the table.
Thank you. Anybody else have something ADU specific? Please, Mark.
Okay, all right. I'm Mark Rodato, 29 Prospect Street. Start by saying I live on a half-acre lot, and I think it's insane that I would be able to build an ADU on it. But I want to talk about sort of, you said ad hominem, and that just warms the cockles of my heart. The flaw of authority is another flaw in informal logic, right? And I worked at the State House. I know you can't tell from the appearance, but lawyers don't give opinions. Judges give opinions, right? Lawyers have the opinion that you pay them to have. And so say, oh, I talked to this lawyer and he does all this. Or, of course he does. And of course he's going to tell you what you want to hear. And just the sense, I haven't followed the ins and outs the way that you have or Al has. My sense is the legislation seems a little slipshod, a little sort of news cycle. Like I said I was going to do something about the housing crisis, and here I've done it. And so it does seem it's going to get resolved in the courts. So I don't know. It doesn't hold a lot of water with me to say I talked to some lawyer at the state and they said this, but it's going to be a judge who's going to decide. I think that's about it.
Thanks, Tom.
Hey, thank you.
No one else. Oh, Stephanie, your hand is up there, I think.
Hi, Stephanie Duclos, 166 Chapman Street. This comment's about the ADU stuff. I'm going to comment about the medical thing shortly. The ADU definition that exists in 40A, 1A of Mass General Laws defines very specifically an ADU in the regulations. I believe there's been some kind of convoluted trying to incorporate the new MBTA. I believe that's 3B maybe of Mass General Code. It might be 3A. So, if you want to, take a look at what applies, at a prior meeting, we were told we weren't an MBTA community. So I know that we're trying to incorporate language of certain requirements of, half a mile within doesn't require parking for you're convoluting the two changes that were presented in the Affordable Cares Act. I mean, the Affordable Homes Act, or whatever it is. I'm sorry. The act itself doesn't have teeth. It doesn't have anything more than grants you may not qualify for at this point. So until they hash that out in the courtroom in the Supreme Court, and how they're going to handle the agency of cities, towns, and citizens themselves, I would recommend that we do a lot more digging into the state and wait for the guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the, yes.
My name is Joan Pyfrom. I live at 95 Maple Street, Greenfield. What I don't understand about a lot of this is a homeowner builds, or is it even the homeowner that builds the ADU on their property? Who foots the bill for building it? The water, sewer, the electricity, anything else that you need to live.
That's
I
an easy
also-
answer.
That's easy. The owner,
Well-
It's the owner of the property.
owner of the property.
Okay, what if the owner of the property cannot afford that? The taxes,
Then
the insurance, all of that
They won't
stuff.
build it.
Choose not to do that.
And what happens if you build it and they don't come? What happens if you build these things, these ADUs, and the homeless people don't want to live in them? What happens?
You're out your investment.
In other words, I'm sorry, you're up shit creek. That's the way it is,
It's
I
not
guess.
like this.
And that is not fair. By right means morally and legally correct. I looked it up. That's what it says. If you pass this, it may be legally correct, but it's so not morally correct because a lot of these homeless people do not want to live in a 900-foot.
It's not meant for homeless people. It's meant for anyone who wants to afford a house.
Okay, but that's
We
what
just
I,
approved,
that is what I heard.
just
The
approved
first
more
part of this
500
thing,
square foot.
that's what I heard. The first part of this, this is my chance to talk. Please let me.
It is.
That's what I heard this whole thing was about, to get the homeless people off the streets.
Not true.
Well, you know what? That's what I heard. If I am wrong, I would like to be corrected. I would love to have my questions answered.
I'm happy to read something that will answer your question.
Well, I would love to have that in writing and bring it home and study it. I would love to have something like that. So I know what's going on with all this stuff.
Sure. It's in the zoning ordinance. You can look that up online. I don't
Okay.
have a copy to give you.
Every
But I
time
can-
I've looked something up online on this website, I have to, it takes me an hour to find what I want to find.
Okay.
So if you could write it down and tell me exactly where to go, I would appreciate that.
What I'm going to do right now is, again, I referred to before, any section of the zoning ordinance, it's so crucial to look at the purpose. What is the purpose? And is to, there are 7 listed, develop housing units in single family or 2-family homes appropriate for households at a variety of stages in their life cycle, provide older homeowners with the means of obtaining rental income, companionship, security, and services, thereby enabling them to stay more comfortably in homes and neighborhoods where they might otherwise be forced to leave, add moderately priced rental units to the housing stock to meet the needs of smaller households, and make housing units available to low and moderate income households, who might otherwise have difficulty finding housing, provide housing units for persons with disabilities, protect stability, property values, and the residential character of a neighborhood, encourage increased housing density, and legalize existing conversions to encourage compliance with the state building code. Those are the 7 purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how I got it into my head that this was all about getting the homeless people off the street. That's what I thought it was.
Thank you. So I appreciate the public, and I know this is a complicated issue and it's a, people have strong feelings about it. And I appreciate offering some grist for our board's deliberative mill. So I guess
One request, so last month we had a public hearing on this. And the other zoning pieces, and the same people said the same things, and I think we've heard those opinions, that it's getting late, we have a lot of other things to talk about. How do we have an open forum but not make it into a public hearing?
This wasn't a public hearing. This was not a public hearing.
And we can, as we get to the end of the meeting and discuss, inter-board stuff, I'm using my discretion as chair. People, I'm not guaranteeing people anything, and I'm trying to establish clear guidelines of comportment as well. But at this point, enough input from the public, and I wanted to turn to the board and say where we are with this. We've gone back and forth about, are we not going to do it? Are we going to wait? Are we going to? And we have
ADU specifically, right?
ADUs, just ADUs at the moment. Yes. So
I think we're up against it. I think we've got a state that has put out a regulation. We need to be compliant with that regulation. We have an ordinance that we've adopted and modified that's compliant with the state as it currently is. There's nothing that says that if the state comes back with changes to their guidelines, we can't change our ordinance. But there's nothing wrong with moving ahead with the ordinance as it is now that meets compliance with the state, which is mandating to us and all the citizens in Massachusetts that this is the law of the land. So we move forward with the law of the land. Until the law changes, we abide by the law.
I'll say the law,
The problem.
the lawsuit, well, it's always complicated. The law is clear about certain factors,
Correct.
about not owner occupied, about non-special permit. And I am hesitant to accept as much expertise as legal minds might have. I'm hesitant to accept, we know this won't be appropriate or this won't be accepted.
And we don't say that.
So I'm just saying, we've been, throwing that around. So I just wanted to say that. I want to react to there were 4 components in the citizen petition. One I think is moot because you have to have the setbacks. And we've added in, is added into here, this larger proposal about the short-term rentals. I believe that to substantively respond to that part of the citizen petition, that the setbacks are what will determine where someone can fit lot size. And I wouldn't be inclined to set a specific amount of acreage. I'm just saying, that's my opinion.
You have to have 40% open space on your property to do anything. Build a driveway, put a garage, put an ADU, it doesn't matter. So if the open space is the concern, we already have a control for that. And that's the setbacks are the second way to control the position of things. But the 40% open space rule governs how much permeable land there is, how much land the rainwater can go into, or you can plant something. So in that respect, if open space is the concern, then what's the difference between an ADU and a garage?
No.
If the concern is housing, then it's a different conversation. But I think the concern is open space. We already have a rule for that that's working just fine.
Thank you. And I do have the question that was made by someone who wrote in about the definition of short-term rental, because I am concerned about that, because that's incredibly
Mayor, Rita Gardner.
yeah. So I wanted to broach that. It does seem like something that has to be operationally defined.
Isn't it kind of self-explanatory? I mean, a year lease is a year lease. No one gives 6 months leases. No one gives 5-month leases. Short-term rental is you rent it for a week, you rent it for 2 weeks. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we need to say anything under a year is a short-term rental. I mean, I don't think we need to go that way. A typical commercial lease is 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So it's just standard stuff.
Yeah, so the short-term rentals, the registration process is through the state and municipalities can regulate. We have not adopted any regulations relative to short-term rentals, but the state has a definition of what a short-term rental is. And by default, that's what this would be, but we could add that exact definition in our ordinance if we feel that is necessary.
And do you happen to know what that definition?
I don't know the definition, but I know there is a definition.
Okay, well, just say as per state definition. Leave it at that. Those short-term rentals as defined by the state.
Yes.
Just state it that way.
Yeah.
And as someone else has mentioned, I think in some of the correspondence, this is applying that guideline, the short-term rentals, only to ADUs. It could be applied in other situations, but it's not.
Exactly.
But we could, as a community, apply that more broadly.
You could adopt an ordinance citywide in every situation relative to short-term rentals.
So I would agree with adding that to that provision,
A little bit of
D11,
extra little wording in there.
to make in compliance with the state.
And that's not a substantive change, such that we didn't have to go back, start the process.
Definition exists already,
Right.
referencing the existing definition.
And is there any further discussion about whether to set this forward, given the uncertainty of the process, to set this forward now or wait or delay on the board? Is that?
We have two mandates, potential mandates. One is to try to approach or reach compliance with the state legislation on ADUs. The other is to implement zoning reform that makes it easier to build housing. We could choose to not talk about compliance with the law and just talk about making housing easier to build. And from that perspective, it's maybe more straightforward. And to me, I'd still land on the side of voting on this because it's a better rule than we have now with respect to enabling more housing development in Greenfield.
I'll just respond that I've been on the board since before the ADU existed, and it took several iterations. It's been a touch point issue for a lot of folks in various ways. And I think we can, a lot of us can appreciate that. And there was an effort previously to shift it to by right. And I know my inclination was to keep it as a special permit, just to have that additional layer of input, because it's so intimate, a relationship between you and your next door neighbor kind of thing. So if we did.
That's not how the ZBA will work. My other short term on the ZBA, unless a project was shown to be detrimental to the community, to the area it was in, it was going to be approved. And if the next door neighbor didn't like it, that was not necessarily a reason for the ZBA to deny the permit. It had to be detrimental to the community. So I want people to understand that as well. It has to be a bigger picture than the next door neighbor complaining.
Well, it would get people into the process.
I'm all for a special permit. I'm not poo-pooing, but
It would give people a chance to perhaps negotiate with the neighbor, something like that.
Absolutely.
In various parts of the process. So
it's a good
I
tool.
thought it was a reasonable safeguard, which I probably would still support if this hadn't come down from the state. I may be in a minority on that, but and I know you disagree, Joe. But given that state mandate, I think
I don't think the special permit process is really a problem. I don't think it's even broken. I don't think there's anything wrong. That was another topic. When we get to that, I'd like to mention that with the other things. But I just wanted to say that, it needs to be, the ZBA needs to see something that's going to inadvertently definitely affect the community and the area that it's in.
So on this proposal, I'm hearing no objections from planning board members to move a recommendation forward.
I agree. Yeah, we should move forward. And it's always modified based on the state's modifications if and when they come. But we're in compliance with what the state's mandating we do.
You're good with that, Peter?
I agree with Victor's sentiment.
Okay. Is there a motion to make a recommendation about this? Yes.
I move to make a recommendation forward that we adopt the ordinance as modified by the planning board to the EDC and to the council.
It's positive recommendation.
Positive
To the
recommendation.
city council.
Right, so we're not adopting the zoning today. This is
No.
recommending that.
There's very little we can do.
Right.
Yeah,
The council makes that decision. This is our
Recommendation.
Right.
Yeah.
we recommend.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Could you repeat the motion?
Sure.
That we make a positive recommendation to move the ADU ordinance forward to the town council.
And you said as amended with.
As amended with that
short-term
little, little change about prior short-term rental.
Talking about Eric's motion.
Correct.
Eric's ordinance.
One other, I don't know if I made this point before, but it's another thing, just trying to, figure out how these ADUs work in Greenfield specifically. Just to point out that in all residential districts in Greenfield, 1, 2, and 3 family buildings are allowed by right. And so and so there's 3 types, there's also 3 types of ADUs that are being discussed right now. So there's an ADU that's within the existing building, which is you make your living space smaller, you carve out a spot within your house and make that a second unit. There's an ADU that's attached to the building. So it has its own footprint, it's an extension of the existing building, but it's attached to it or within 10 feet. And then there's the detached, which is more than 10 feet away from the existing building. All 3 of those are ADUs. But if you had a single family home and you wanted to add a unit to your home now, you could by right just do that by carving your single family into a 2 family. So it'd be an internal ADU or just a second unit, or attaching a unit to your existing unit. You can do that by right. You could call it an ADU if you want. It's actually just called a second unit in Greenfield because we don't have single family districts. We only have 1, 2, and 3 family districts. So the only issue on the table is detached ADUs. Otherwise, if you want to build an ADU, just call it a unit and you can do it by right now. If you have a 1 or a 2 family unit, with the caveat that if you go from 2 to 3, there's sprinklers required. There's building code issues, but they're not zoning code issues.
Is there any further discussion by the board? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, so the other questionable issue was about the raising the maximum number of units per building. And we had 2 kind of competing proposals. And so I don't know if the board wants to hear from Councilor Garrett, his perspective on the status of this or.
My sense is we're voting on the most recent one, the standing one that's in front of the council, right?
Excuse me,
Yes.
my hand was raised for the last comment and no one called on me. So my name is Erica McGee. I live on Fort Square East. I just wanted to answer the question of what was the definition of a short-term rental. It says that in Massachusetts, a short-term rental is defined as a residential dwelling or bedroom that is rented out for a fee for a period of 31 days or less. Short-term rentals do not include hotels, motels, lodging houses, or bed and breakfasts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So you were saying?
I'm unclear if we're unclear as to which multifamily change we're talking about. The one that changes the numbers, the one that strikes the.
Well, we held a public hearing.
We held a public hearing on the one that says 24 to 50, 6 to 10. But I don't believe a public hearing was held on the new, you strike the subsection in its entirety. And that would be a substantive change that would require a new public hearing. So I think the only legit thing before the board right now is the one that goes from 24 to 50, 6 to 10.
I thought we got rid of the limits completely.
You could officially request to withdraw this if you feel like the striking its entirety is a better idea. And then just hold a new public hearing on that. It's up to the board.
Yeah, I think we had a discussion. I thought we got rid of the limits at all because we were talking about like a apartment building had 60 or 70. I thought we got rid of it.
Do you want to hear from Councilor Garrett? Since he's been in the midst of
That would
it?
be most useful.
John, can you?
Yep. Can you guys hear
perspective on
me?
this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, frankly, I was just scrambling to look at the packet on the calendar, but I remembered it being in there as just a strike through. So this came up earlier too about the process. There was some confusion on it. what had happened was, I had come to the planning board meeting a couple months ago based on the input you guys had given me about striking it potentially rather than modifying it. I had gone to City Hall, met up with Kathy and Tammy in City Hall. They told me basically I needed to make sure that if I was going to make a change, it had to be before the public hearing. And so I submitted it to the full council before the public hearing that happened last month. So that is legitimate, the strike through.
That's all.
So I hope that's
Thank you.
helpful.
That's what I remember.
That's very helpful.
As I recall, thank you, John, Councilor Garrett, and as I recall, we were confused because there were two proposals kind of on the table because the planning board hadn't been officially informed of the change. And so we hadn't gotten that proposal prior to the meeting. So what we had in our materials we had been given were different than what the councilors, the EDC had. So it's something lost in the process there of updating the planning board about that. But I appreciate your clarification that had been shifted to the no limit at the time of the public hearing.
Yeah, it was.
Point of,
Go ahead.
point of clarification on that.
Yes.
I can assure you from being at that meeting, I noticed it, but I don't think anybody understood that it was going from 24 to 50. No, it was going to nothing.
Correct.
And there was no testimony at all presented about completely taking the cap off the number of dwelling units. You have people here tonight who want to talk about that, at least 7 or 8 or 9 people who are here just for that purpose, because they're upset about multifamily dwellings that are being proposed in their neighborhood. I would suggest that at some point those people be allowed to speak, but that was, Eric, I think that was a substantial change. I mean, you took the information that Councilor Garrett put together and that you worked on. But that idea of a total cross out of that section is a substantial change to something that was already being discussed. No clarification was made at all at the council meeting, the EDC hearing that I can recall, where it was explained that we are considering a motion that eliminates the cap on the number of apartments that can be in one building, eliminates it completely. That didn't happen. And I would say that that's a pretty substantive change to make to what was introduced to the council. So I don't know where, I don't think, if you want to have a public hearing on that, you will get opinions on that, but I don't think you've had that hearing.
Thanks, Al. Peter?
So both of those topics were absolutely discussed at that public hearing. This board discussed removing the cap when Councilor Garrett was present. So there's 2 meetings there. We talked about it between that meeting that Councilor Garrett brought it up and the meeting between the public hearing on it. I don't think that it's a surprise that it's being talked about.
People don't know about it at all.
John, you want to?
So, so Al and friends, if you want to speak to this, EDC will have to talk about this before it votes at the full council. So there's going to be another opportunity for public comment as well. One thing, just because I have the opportunity with my voice to be heard here, this change would eliminate this section of the zoning ordinance, but it is not an unlimited number of apartments that it would allow. So it's really misleading to call it open zoning or free range zoning. Again, if free range zoning, everyone, in any case, I was going to make a joke about chickens, but I'll restrain myself. The difference with this is it removes an arbitrary cap on the number of units in a building and replaces it with, very similar to the ADUs, restrictions based on the dimensional table in the zoning ordinance. So you can't have a building larger than, I think it's 45 feet in the central commercial and 35 in all the other zones. So there's a height restriction already there. Setback requirements would apply. So, and the open space requirement of 40% would also apply. You'd also have to have adequate water and sewer, all the things that a 3-family home or a 2-family home or a single-family home would be required to have would still apply to multifamily housing wherever it was built, regardless if it was by special permit or as by right. So to call it unlimited numbers of units of housing is an argument that's clearly intended to claim that this is something that it is not. It's again, it's a change that changes the box size does not change if we're thinking about an apartment or a row house full of condos, but the way that it's subdivided does. Another piece of this is a number of the nonprofit developers who are hoping to build in Greenfield have a difficult time competing for grants that are very competitive with the eastern part of the state for what the state considers to be very small housing projects. So that 24 unit limit, when you're applying for a grant and the state looks at your zoning ordinance, that's shooting us in the foot, basically competing for money from the state that will allow us to address our housing crisis. So I just appreciate the time to, offer hopefully some clarification. And I also want to reiterate again to members of the public, I am your city councilor in addition to being somebody advocating for these zoning changes. Please contact me. And I would love to have a conversation with you about these issues, especially if you have concerns about them. I've made this offer a number of times and shockingly, no one has actually taken me up on it, but I highly encourage you. My phone number is available on the city council's website. Call me. I'm a public school teacher. I'm ready to talk. Yep.
I'll call it myself. I'll call it myself, excuse me. I appreciate Councilor Garrett, your offer to be personally available. I appreciate you saying you can come to the EDC. From my perspective, the crucial interface between the public and the process of a proposed zoning ordinance is at a public hearing. And I'll confess that at that last meeting, I was quite confused. I may have contributed to the confusion, but I remember a reference at the prior meeting about eliminating the caps altogether, but I didn't see anything. Obviously you wouldn't see anything in writing because it would be blank, but I didn't see a reference to that, which was the new proposal. That was a surprise to me at that meeting. And we went back and forth with some confusion. I think you have to have a well-informed and well-prepared public at a public hearing to give a response to something like that. That's my perspective on it. And if we didn't have our ducks in a row to make a clear and accessible process, I think that's on us. I am not sure where I definitely am supportive of the idea of increasing the cap. I am not sure because I haven't had a chance to research it fully about the idea of eliminating the section altogether. Obviously, other board members had thought well about that, and I'm happy to be informed by their perspective. But I just wanted to say I think it was kind of messy at that public hearing, and even if technically that was on the agenda, I had some concerns about how it played out. So I guess technically the no section at all is on the table to be discussed for a potential recommendation to the city council. And I will say in that context that we got a lot of input, and the majority of people who wrote expressed concern with that change. A few people were very supportive of it, but it did. I think the majority of people said they were concerned about doing the increase even beyond the 24 units. So just a reference.
I got the impression that the real concern was the by rights, not necessarily the sizes. A lot of people mentioned it, but I think I got the impression it was the by right thing. And if I may take 2 minutes of myself, I don't think the special permit thing is broken. I think there's no reason why we can't leave that in place. That gives the public the right. It gets rid of all of these other things that people are asking us to put in place, because that all happens at the ZBA. They have their chance to comment, they have their chance to ask questions. All that stuff happens at the ZBA. So if we leave the special permit in place, then they have all those things that they're asking for and all these other emails. They get their opportunities to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, I think at the special permit process is the public's chance to speak But I think it really should not be for the developer to prove his innocence. I think if the public has an issue, they need to prove his guilt. So if they have an issue with a project, they need to be prepared to what that project really is, what that issue really is, and have some way to bring it forward and stop putting all the onus on the developer. Because that's what all this does. It's just a way to discourage a development. We are here at this board trying very hard to open up Greenfield to development and housing. We're not a small town. We're the city of Greenfield. We're the hub of Franklin County, whether we like it or not. We have all of its social ills here that we have to deal with. And we need to have a thriving community where people want to come. All the things that we have going on here, drug rehab, drug programs, homeless programs, illegal immigrants and refugees, none of those are calling cards to come to Greenfield. We don't even have a train that goes in and out to Boston. I checked that today, just out of curiosity. You can't even get, so you're not even a commuter place. So we have nothing to offer in this town to bring people into it. This nice little lazy, quiet little town is going to collapse if we can't get people and businesses back into this town. And every time we put obstacles in the way, we shy people away. I wasn't here when the Walmart thing happened, but I want to know how that helped the town. We lost the revenue, we lost the job opportunities. Wilson's closed anyway. And now the biggest thing I hear from my neighbors is they have to drive to Hadley to buy underwear.
Take that money out.
Please don't.
So
Please no.
that did not help the community in any way. And if we continue down this road of stopping and putting roadblocks in the way of people either wanting to move here because it's got something to offer, or businesses want to develop because they have a market, we're going to kill this town.
So I want to give you a reference.
That's my thing. So going back to the special permit, I think we should leave the special permits in place for all these changes. I think we should eliminate the cap on the number of buildings, houses. I think we should eliminate the height restrictions. So you can't build any higher than the highest existing building in Greenfield. Whatever that building is, that's what you can build to, because there's already one here, or two, or three.
So you're,
We'll leave the special permits in place.
yeah, you're painting a broad picture.
Yeah,
And
well.
there are two of these things, two of these proposals that are linked. One is the raising the amount of, raising the maximum number. And there wouldn't be a maximum number with the proposal that's in front of us. The, as far as the by right or special permit.
That I think is the same place. I think it's.
Let me finish, please. As currently, I want to educate the public as well about the situation. So currently in the central commercial district, multifamily is by right. So that would mean that raising the cap would allow multifamily of whatever, size in, based on other factors.
Whatever size.
No,
Whatever
thank
fits
you.
within the
Yeah, yeah.
envelope, which are tightly regulated.
Yep. Within the central, then the second thing that you're linking together is whether or not for the semi-residential zoning district to make that comparable to the central commercial, going from a special permit to site plan review. So two things that are interlaced in some ways.
Semi-residential and not any other convention district, just that one district, which is
That is
right
adjacent.
next to downtown, not very big.
Yep.
I-
So getting back to thank you for your broad vision and linking to these specific decisions. So we have the elimination of that paragraph. That's section paragraph 4 in that portion of the zoning ordinance to eliminate that number. And so that's the proposal before us. And I want to see if the planning board, well, as I said, the majority of people who wrote in were concerned about that, about the size. Is there anyone here that wants to you can keep it brief, I would appreciate it. Yeah.
Keep the rest of my thing out. All right. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Susan Wargaftic. I live on Forest Avenue, and I'm speaking tonight as myself and not as Housing Greenfield. Housing Greenfield will be meeting on Monday night to discuss these issues, and if we have either a support or opposition to those particular ordinance ideas, we will be in touch with you via mail to let you know. Greenfield in 2024 is not Greenfield 50 years ago, nor are the present day views of planners those of planners of 50 years ago. With the development of concerns about energy usage and the great need for more affordable housing, the views of what is good public policy has changed over the last 50 years or the last 20 years since plus that I have lived here. Building a more walkable and more densely populated community takes the pressure for development off our open spaces, off our parks, our farmlands, our open fields. Every kind of housing does not need to be surrounded by great amounts of open land to be a habitable building. Nor does every habitable building need to be owner occupied, though that would be nice. Home ownership is not for everyone. Rental housing can help a young family put away the funds to put down a down payment on a home at a later time. It can also take off the economic pressure off a senior who no longer wants the responsibility of caring for a home or a condo. One size doesn't fit all. Walkable communities create an atmosphere that encourages community interaction and the use of our open recreational spaces by all the residents of the community. Rejecting change in our zoning regulations may well relegate Greenfield to becoming the vacant old factory town that we have been valiantly working against for years. No growth in our housing stock when we have seniors who have no place to downsize to, and families who have no place for expansion is a recipe for stagnation and irrelevancy. The zoning changes that have come before you, including the strikeout provisions that you've been discussing, encourage the development of more dense housing in areas close to downtown and in neighborhoods where other housing already exists. They do not make Greenfield into Boston or New York City, but they do encourage the use of that space to make Greenfield a more walkable and a more user-friendly community. In our downtown area, we do not have blocks upon blocks of vacant housing waiting for large developers to come to our community to exploit them for the benefit of big profit. And any land more than 5 acres is covered by the cluster developing ordinance that you've already in place. I say this because our rents are generally not high enough and our population not affluent enough to make this of great interest to most corporate developers. The 32-unit housing development described yesterday by Al Norman in the recorder seems to be perfectly within the scope and logic of Greenfield's other downtown development plans. I would only wish that those who are so concerned about a relatively small housing opportunity such as this would be as concerned about the dilapidated and possibly dangerous housing that is already in Greenfield and held by some of our local larger landlords. I believe that based upon the reading that I have so far, the proposed zoning changes being discussed this evening are both appropriate and necessary for Greenfield at this time. And I thank you very much for listening to my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who want to offer thought about this? The eliminating the cap on the number of units. None. Okay.
Wait. Yeah. There's a bunch of folks here, I don't know why they're holding back, but there's a bunch of folks here whose neighborhood is being affected by a large project.
I'll repeat.
I'll
repeat. If anyone wants to speak to it, please let me know and you can come up here.
Chrissy here, 26 Sunrise Ave. I've been here forever, in town. I looked through the changes that are being made and I don't really understand the reasonings behind them all. I know from even sitting here for the time I've been in here that you guys are going through some very complex questions and answers. When I look at the larger community in Greenfield and I look at the areas that you're talking about, which is the special, I want to say rural, urban, whatever it is, the attached pieces to the central commercial.
Semi-residential. Yeah.
What is it?
Semi-residential.
Semi-residential. Okay. And I noticed where the areas are. I certainly appreciate the fact that it's all within walking distance of downtown Greenfield. I think that any type of developments happen like this, it's in the right area. When we get into talking about 24 units versus however many can be put on a piece of property, it just sends me into a kind of a tizzy. I thought if you have something like 24 units and somebody comes in and says, look, this place could really take 70 units, they would come to you and talk about it. Again, special permits. And I thought that's what special permits were for. And when I, by right to come in, if somebody wants to like buy an incredible swath of properties and put in something in what is now a neighborhood, that it would change the nature of Greenfield. For good or bad, I don't know. I mean, I was involved in the housing market in Greenfield through many times in my life. I was involved in the Miller's Falls building when it changed to housing. Was a pretty good use of an old building. I don't see the areas in the areas that you're laying out that have enough space for really large developments. And one of my greatest concerns is to move it outside of that area and move it into areas that there is no easy way for people to get into downtown Greenfield. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think that's a very helpful comment. So, George, I think a lot of people feel the same way you do. And I'm here from all of them too.
That's it.
The way that you explain that helps me understand where the misunderstanding is on this issue. First of all, multifamily is not allowed in most of the city, including Sunrise. I mean, I don't know if you were speaking.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the zoning that you are actually looking at, which is the special rural or
Semi-residential.
It's two things.
That's a different.
Increasing the number of units that are allowed.
Right.
And then making that, whether or not that can be by right in the semi-residential as it is in the central commercial. It already is by right.
Okay.
In central commercial. So it's two things that are kind of related.
Right.
Increasing the number of units.
Right. And what I'm saying is I can see the need for going into that in the semi-residential. I don't see that it shouldn't be happening outside of that without special permits.
It's not allowed to happen at all.
You can't even do it with special permit. You can't do it at all.
Allowed.
And we're not
Thank you.
suggesting we change that.
I'm done.
So there was a very misleading article in the Recorder that suggested that a 6-story multifamily building could be built. That regardless of what we do tonight, you can't build a 6-story building in Greenfield because there's a 50-foot height limit. So I think there's a lot of, I think as we get in, it's complicated because all these dimensional requirements kind of do hem in what you can do. Like technically what we're doing is changing the definition of multifamily. We're not saying that you can build because there's no cap in the definition in the zoning code. You can therefore build as much as you want wherever you want. You're tightly constrained. And in fact, you can't build multifamily almost anywhere in town except right around downtown. And if you do try to build multifamily right around downtown, you're constrained by height limits, by setback limits, by open space limits, by lot area per unit limits, which was the one that John left off his list, which all these things make a building shrink. And it can only be so big on a parcel. And when you look at the size of the parcels in the semi-residential district, most of them are pretty small. So you can't have a towering skyscraper because of all these other rules that hem you back into something that's much more reasonable, including the 35-foot height limit.
Unless I'm mistaken, you can't build, if you're only allowed to build 24 units, you can't get a special permit to build 36. That's not what special permits do. So you can't build more than 24 right now. So the idea is allow you to build more if you can. And that's just do it. And you ask why? Economics. It really comes down to economics. For a developer to build, it needs to be economically feasible. So if he wants to build 10 units, he's going to have to charge $7,000 a month rent. But if you can build 35 units, you can charge $2,000 a month rent. If you build 50, so it really comes down to economics. What can a developer make money on? So let's be honest, the developer has to make money or he's not going to be here. But do it at an affordable rate so that we can afford them. So that's really why we're trying to get rid of these limits, to give the developers a chance to build something economically for them that works for us.
So we have a person in the room and a couple online. I'd ask, it is late, so just ask people to be concise. And especially if you're making fresh fresh points. That's, thank you. So I want to balance hearing from the public and also respecting the board, keeping the board sharp so we can make wise decisions.
Gentlemen, thanks for your discussion earlier. I just wanted to, sorry, Colby Lunt, 38 Sunrise Ave.
Thank you.
I'm a neighbor of Chris here, just stepped up, and we have a lot of in common. I'm not going to repeat things that he said or that have been said or will maybe yet be said. But the thing that strikes me as I listen to what's going on here affects people in a way that somehow doesn't seem to hit the table. Everything's about the developers, everything's about the 22 units or the 55 units or whatever, but nobody said anything about the communities that those types of developments enter and disrupt, either by reducing the values of their homes, screwing up their tax issues where they're still paying for higher homes that carried higher costs for resale that don't exist anymore. The divisiveness of adding, you talk about 22 units is no big deal. It's a huge deal. And a neighborhood that we live in is got about 45 homes in it. And the meetings that I've been to so far and the discussions I've had with people who are more than aware and involved and caring of what happens to Greenfield. I've been a Greenfield resident for 75 years. I know the area, for example, in the development down below on Stone Farm Lane, by hand, combed it as an 8-year-old. I really feel I have a grip for what's down there and what is best for what's down there. And I also live up and over that area, which is not going to be the greatest addition to the view out my back door. And I think that what's been missing in all these discussions is there's no sense of concern for the peoples whose neighborhoods and lives are disrupted by the addition of the new property developments that are being cited or called on from here. And you said, well, you get a little drift out of that from, say, Chris when he stepped up. But I'd like to add to that because you're leaving a lot of people behind who know that their properties values are going to plummet. Their environments in their homes are going to change dramatically. And it's a really serious thing. And it involves a lot of people who've spent their whole lives in town aspiring to get the kind of things that are going to be taken away. 22 units is no small thing at all, particularly if it's closer to you than Village Pizza is to us right now. It's a big deal. So I'll stick on that and just let you know that's part of something we haven't heard anything about tonight.
Just to be clear, if you have a big property, that based on all the other regulations that are in place that control the massing and the height and the density, you can build more than 24 units today. It just has to be in 2 different buildings. But we're not talking about how many units you can build, period. It's just how many buildings does it have to be spread across. So it would be more sprawling development to limit each building to 24 units and limit each entrance to 6 units. It necessarily has to be a garden style apartment that takes up a lot more space and is a lot less attractive. So this just allows in an urban setting, the consolidation of that, so you get more units in a tighter space. You don't take up so much land with extra buildings, extra parking lots. It fits more into the context downtown. So the number of units is not, the number of units that one could build in a development isn't changing by this rule change, it's just the number per building. So you could still have something that you don't like with or without this rule.
We're trying to make it denser. So all we're doing is making it denser. Instead of it being sprawling over the entire property.
Yeah, I understand it completely. Yep, I'm just talking about the communities that I know and live in and talk to people about and share my thoughts with, being extremely disturbed about adding the one that we've talked about here tonight when it came around to this discussion. You think an ADU, a tiny ADU in the back of somebody's backyard or something, try putting 22 units in your backyard. You won't like it.
Well, 22 is allowed now.
I understand. I understand. That's why issues like septic and other issues related to the permitting of that development are critical, just like traffic impact. No by right anything that should never exist. And you talk about 55, it's really unpopular, guys. And I get what you said. I understand that. I don't agree with it, but I do understand it. But that's my piece of change for the evening. I just wanted to join my compatriots back here who are single-minded, and there are about 20 more of them edges, around the edges of this thing that just didn't have to show up tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And I see Stephanie and Jimmy.
I have,
Stephanie? Oh, I'm sorry. I hadn't seen you. Sorry, hold off, Stephanie, please.
Hi, I'm Beth Lorenz. I live in Sunrise Avenue. Thank you very much for tonight's discussion. I'm sort of getting up to speed on a lot of this, even though I've always been very passionate about understanding as a taxpayer the responsibility that you have for both commercial sites as well as residential sites. I've had a pleasure of supporting both for the town of Greenfield for many years. One of the things that I think is most important to me tonight, based upon what you're talking about for changing or informing or improving information, is that we sometimes forget to be accountable for the services that are municipal services provided once you have those developments either allowed, put in, spread out, or raised up. And what we have found, more specifically since COVID, to be honest with you, is that the neighborhoods that we have created families that we never knew we had, who are our neighbors next door, because we got very close and tight. During that process, we also saw that some of the municipal services or treatments or surfaces, actually technically called roads, changed. They were either changed and taken away from being asphalt and turned into chip seal, as an example, in our neighborhood specifically, which was a concern and not actually asked for. So if all of a sudden you see an additional development, which can by right be put on a large property, and it has 22 units and they may be 3 stories tall, as long as they satisfy the height requirements, you're going to have transportation that's going to be going into what might never have been considered a major road or a minor road. So what I wanted to express this evening is that the accountability for these decisions that you make tonight or going forward about increasing opportunities and making more availability will increase other requirements. And we have already found we've been underserved in our neighborhood in that way, with just the road surfaces that had created problems. In fact, hospitalizations for a few people who had fallen after it was installed. And there are actually troughs and problems. And we actually put a complaint in to try to say, can someone come back and try to improve upon this? And the comment we heard was a very good budget comment or response. And I understand it was, well, we don't have the funding for it, but we're going to do more of this in other neighborhoods. So if you do strong developments and changes and you think about it, I think special permits give you responsibilities to be able to make sure everybody's being held accountable, both the developer, the town, and the neighborhood then is a part of that support system because we're the ones that pay the taxes. So from my standpoint, I think that you guys here have a big responsibility that's bigger than the room that you can sit in today. It's very large for us. I moved here when there were 18,000 residents in Greenfield. I think there are now 17,500 residents in Greenfield. And yet other communities have developed a lot. So I understand why we want to try to have more. It makes very good sense. But what's important is to make sure it's tied together with all the other responsibilities as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen up there and gals.
Stephanie, got a comment?
Hi, yes, thanks, George. I wanted, wow, Colby and the woman that followed, wow, fantastic. Also, I wanted some clarification on some definitions, seeing as how I am in current litigation. So I wanted a clarification on how a temporary homeless shelter is defined as a multifamily unit, and is it affected by the definition change that is being recommended tonight? If so, I wanted to forewarn you that I would have to use this meeting as evidence in that current court case. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I would assume we would just be making a recommendation. It would be for the council to make a change. And that wouldn't be retroactive. That would be, right? That wouldn't,
No, it wouldn't
We
affect
change
any
any
existing
definitions.
scenario.
it wouldn't affect something that had already been decided or.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I was looking for the definition because I know that Victor had expressed concerns about what he does not want to see downtown, which is, comes up to the next issue of what, what you're proposing as amendments. But if you don't have clarification on what a homeless shelter is, if that is considered multifamily housing, which I believe is being debated at the Supreme Court level on the town of Fitchburg or the city of Fitchburg. So I do want to caution you that some of the definitions that they're proposing may include things like calling it a trailer an ADU, or calling a temporary homeless shelter or a sober home or a rehab as housing. And I know that certain cities are challenging that point as well. So I just wanted to caution that. Thanks.
Point taken. Thank you.
Stephanie, I don't believe that I was comparing housing to homeless shelter. I think I was just listing some of the social programs that are in Greenfield, and I listed homeless shelters as something that's in Greenfield. I was in no way trying to tie it into multifamily housing. And if you got that impression from me, I apologize. I certainly was not what I was doing. I was simply listing social services that as the center of Franklin County, we seem to have as our responsibility.
So I just had another question about that then. If the definition of a multifamily housing is somehow changed to include temporary shelters or rehabs or convalescent or dormitories or whatever they change those definitions of, that will indeed affect how we treat, a potential rehab, sober home, some addiction housing in our central commercial district. And so I really am concerned that if we don't exclude that type, despite the definition, or to maybe tighten that definition so that we're not, victims to predators. That's my biggest concern. Thank you.
Thank you for the point, Stephanie. And Jimmy, you have a last thought before we work toward a board vote on this?
Yeah, I do. Kind of echoing that's my partner that said that, but what it wasn't mentioned is, Garrett said there's nonprofits waiting to come into this town, like to develop. He said nonprofits. Usually those nonprofits, we know what those are and what style of housing. It's been talked about before. I know it could be considered classist or NIMBY or something, but you really have to think about what the other woman was talking about. When we allow all this low income housing in and stuff like that, because that's what it'll be, because you say no one wants to come here because there's no jobs, no nothing. When we open up our thing, the only thing that's open is people that are guaranteed rents or guaranteed clients from the state pays a lot to house somebody, and we're getting dumped on by Springfield and Boston. It is happening out here, and you're going to open up spaces for these people to be able to develop with no distinct language on any of this. Like my wife was saying, if there's nothing out here to offer, like Victor was saying, and nonprofits are waiting to come in for the zoning changes, then what do you think we're going to get here? More burden that the taxpayers, and then if you go to the assessors meeting and you look at the map, the homeowners are paying, the commercial's not paying, all these nonprofits are non-tax exempt. So it just keeps adding the burden onto the single family homes. It's ridiculous what we're doing. And it's not thought of properly and not looked at. Thank you very much. And that's about it.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn to the board now. We have.
George, I would like a chance to talk about you.
Okay.
I talked about ADUs, but this is a different subject.
Please come up.
Thank you, George.
Concise would be helpful.
Yes, of course.
We're out of time.
My first response is I would like to say something to Victor. I've been living here for about 47 years now, Victor, and
I paid a ton of taxes in that time to this town. And I want to tell you why I moved here. 3 words in my dictionary: quality of life. That's the reason why I'm here tonight. That's why you see me here tonight. I was able to buy a very affordable house back in the 80s. It was almost given to me. And I put a lot of money into my house to fix it up over the years. It's a beautiful Victorian house in a beautiful Victorian neighborhood. I can walk downtown. I raised 3 children here. This is a town that I think has a great quality of life. And I can tell by the people that knock on the door immediately when homes become available in the area at Precinct 5 that I live in, immediately. And these are people that are not Greenfield residents. They're coming from all over, from Connecticut, from New York, from Boston, and they're buying houses very affordably compared to everywhere else in Massachusetts. So that's why people are still coming here. Even though a lot of our population is falling, the elderly population is not. And I have worked with the seniors for 40 years, 30 of them on Beacon Hill, and I can tell you that they do not want to be pushed out of their houses or encouraged to leave their houses for a smaller facility. And I will talk more about this in my next column in the Recorder about the issue of AARP says that 90% of the seniors do not want to move. They want to die where they are living. And I hope to be one of those people. But as far as the issue of multifamily, this is my slogan. I am not a buy right person. I believe that special permits balance the needs of the neighbors with the needs of developers. I am not. I consider buy right zoning to be anti-zoning. It deconstructs zoning. Developers have no trouble with special permits. My God, I think I've watched dozens and dozens of special permit hearings, and I can't remember one where a special permit was denied. What I've seen is, and that includes Walmart, by the way, which got a special permit but could never build here because the voters wouldn't let it happen in '93, and Walmart lost interest in 20 years later. But we special permits should not be seen as a bad bogeyman. That is bad for developers or bad for neighbors. It's not. It's a protection. I agree with George. It's a protection for both the neighbor and for the developer. And in fact, I've seen a lot of developments get better conditions added after a special permit that the developer hadn't even thought of. You know what we saw tonight, which was really wonderful for me to see? You had a developer stand up and turn around to the audience and start pitching their project to the audience. And what did you see happen? I didn't hear a single negative word about what he was proposing for Main Street. I happen to support that project. I think it's a great one. Could be some issues with it, but in terms of landlord from Florida, but that's the kind of thing that I think we all want to see. It struck a lot of positive notes. I don't support taking special permits off for large multifamily dwellings, which let's say what they really are. They're apartment buildings. And the 24 apartment limit, I think, is useful. You have a project that I mentioned in my column the other day that wants to, nobody knows it yet. It hasn't been applied to the zoning board. No one's seen it yet. But these 2 entrepreneurs want to put some multifamily housing where the former Bart's ice cream store was. That's fine. They've said that they want to have 32 units, which is above the amount that is currently allowed in the Central Commercial District. I'm sorry, maybe it's unlimited in the CC, but they want a fair amount of apartments to be located there. And these folks tonight who came from Sunrise Avenue, they're concerned because they live next to 32 acres. And a lot of housing could go there. Now, that's 6 times the size of a minimum application for open space. Now, why the city of Greenfield hasn't said to these people, hey, let's talk about truly creating a more efficient use of the land out there than building 2, 3, 4, whatever they end up building out there if you take off the cap for the number of apartments they can build out there. But with 32 acres, they can put up a lot of apartments and change the whole course of the rest of the lives of those people that live out there. So
I think these limits are on there for a reason. I think we can quibble about should it be 24, should it be 25, but the idea of taking it off completely, which George, I understand is what you voted just now, right? You voted to recommend to the city council.
We have not been
Voted,
You haven't voted on it
We're
yet?
gonna.
All right, let me just point something out to people that you may not be aware of. Years ago, and I'm talking about probably dating back to 1993 or earlier, the town then of Greenfield put a limit of 50 apartments to trigger, guess what? A major development review. So if I came to you and wanted to build 51 units, I'd have to have a major development review. Sound awful? No. Walmart came in with a huge project, walked away with a special permit with 21 conditions on it, didn't say a word. They were happy, delighted to be getting the support of the planning board at the time. The problem is they didn't have support of the neighbors. And they didn't have support of the residents of Greenfield, and they lost at the ballot. But the point is that whether it's a major development limit of 50, or whether it's a 24, or whether it's 30, these things are helpful guidelines for people to not wonder, well, how many can I put up? And I have not met anybody yet who wants to see the height limit raised. But you know, I will be honest with you. I think that what you're seeing today is the beginning of the camel's nose under the tent. It's the idea that let's start off with the SR zone for a special permit, getting rid of a special permit, doing it by right. And then a year later, you're talking about a couple of other zones by right. And then a year later, you're talking about raising the height limit. I mean, these things are done incrementally. I've seen it happen over the time life of that I've been here. And in the article that I wrote yesterday, what the people were responding to was that in Cambridge, they want to allow multifamily residential housing to be built anywhere. Housing could be built up to at least 6 stories. Minimum lot size requirements would be eliminated. Setback requirements would be reduced or eliminated. I mean, this is what I imagine is the dream of some of the people that are here tonight.
Now, when people read that, they think that that's what we're proposing right now, just to be clear.
I just want to, we've heard you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we're gonna move on to.
Okay, but what I'm telling you is that this is what I think some of you want.
That's okay.
And you can say, no, we don't want, but when we get into the issue of the site plan review, I've got some comments too, George, and I don't know if you can do that tonight. But as a citizen, I have the right to comment on these things, and what you did earlier today was with that gentleman, that's what you should be doing. And I congratulate you for it.
Thank you. Let me have Al go back. Let's talk amongst.
Well, I just like to
Yes.
respond to what he's saying, because they keep saying the wrong thing. Let's just assume you have a 10-acre lot and you're allowed to build.
Excuse me, I just don't want to have it back and forth.
I won't have it back. I just want to try to
Thank you.
the same thing.
Thank you.
Assume you have it, so I can't speak.
No, I didn't want to have it back and forth.
Stop.
Thank you.
People keep saying stuff about, crowding all those apartments on you and open space. Let's assume you had a 10-acre lot and you're allowed to build 96 apartments on that 10-acre lot, but you can only put them in 24 to build. So now you got 3 or 4 buildings. So now let's say that 10 acres is now, it was originally 10 acres, but with all these buildings now, it's only 2 acres of open space. We're trying to get it to where you can build all those 96 apartments in one building, in the middle, maybe 3 floors high. And now you don't have 10% open space, you have 70% open space, because you didn't have to build all these little buildings all around. You could build them in one space. We're not allowing you to build more buildings. We're not allowing that.
So
We're allowing you to build denser buildings, so you have more open space.
So
Just saying that.
you're starting the deliberation about the point about the raising the number of units.
Yes, correct.
Yep.
It's not raising the number of units. It's raising the allowable units in one building.
Thank you. Thanks for the
So
clarification.
that people can understand that. We're not saying you can build more buildings, more units than you're already allowed to build. You can build them denser. So you don't have to take up as much land.
It's not taller, it's the same, it's still 3 stories in most
Right.
parts of town and 5 stories downtown.
Yeah.
4 stories, it's 50 feet, it's only 4 stories.
That's a key point that had to be clarified. People need to understand that. Not increasing units, just units per building.
Density, just
The
density.
other thing is in the rule that we're talking about striking is currently nowhere can you build a building that has more than 24 units. Central business district or otherwise. Also, you have to separate the buildings by 40 feet. So just think about how that would have to sprawl across the property. And all of a sudden, we have some downtown sites that are great places for development, but this forces you to build so non-densely that it no longer makes economic sense to build there. The open space rule is
talking about
a separate rule.
So, so I want to bring us back to deliberation on this. This is the issue of eliminating that paragraph. And is there further deliberation or is there a motion someone wants to make?
I propose we move forward with that. We recommend a positive recommendation for eliminating that cap.
Is there a second of that?
Second.
Okay.
You can do it.
And further discussion from the board.
So just so I understand, there's a motion and a second to strike subsection B4 in its
To
entirety.
accept the striking of subsection.
Yeah.
We accept the change of striking subsection. Hello?
As a recommendation to the council.
Yep.
Positive recommendation.
Okay, if there's no further discussion,
People what that means?
if, I think it's been described
Just
quite a bit.
explained it to you.
So, so I want to, then call a vote. There's no further discussion. All in favor of that recommendation? That motion.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion is to accept the striking of the limitation on the number of units that can be in one building. Not the number of buildings, not the number of units, the number of units that can be in one building. So we can build a denser building.
Unlimited, just be clear about it.
No, it's not unlimited.
Al, you
Not-
had
it's
multiple
limited-
chances to speak.
It's limited by what the.
No, please don't engage him. We're talking amongst ourselves here.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
since I'm writing the motion down, I need clarification. So
Yes.
there are two different things. Okay, there's a proposal to strike subsection B4 in its entirety. Isn't that what you just voted on? So we're
Well,
not
haven't voted yet,
changing
but-
from 24 to 50. We're not going from 6 to 10. We are eliminating
That's the motion.
that section in its entirety.
We're not striking. It's already been struck by someone.
You are forwarding a positive recommendation to the city
That's
council
correct.
on the striking of subsection
Correct,
B4.
that's correct.
Okay, so everyone.
That's the motion.
Yes.
That's the motion.
Okay, got it.
Everyone clear on what the motion is? All right, all board members in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
And I am going to abstain simply because, as I was saying, I didn't have a chance, because it was unclear to me when this was coming forward. I didn't have a chance to fully analyze it, but I very much respect the input of other board members. Now we're moving on to the kind of related, allowing multifamily dwellings by right with site plan review in the semi-residential zoning district.
I disagree.
And we've already heard some input about that.
That one I disagree with. I think the special permit is a viable opportunity for people to say something. I have no problem with special permit.
To me, the distinction is, so special permit is an expensive thing to do if you're a small developer building something small. It just on a per unit basis, it adds a lot of cost to the project that might make it untenable. To a Walmart or to a 50-unit building, something much larger, you can amortize the cost, special permit, and there's all sorts of other things that special permit ought to be paying attention to too. So special permit has a place. And that, I mean, it exists for a reason. So I'm wondering if there's a caveat to this rule that, like, let's say you wanted to build a 4-unit building. I mean, how different is that than a 3-unit building in terms of impact on your neighbors? So if you want to build a 50-unit building, it's obvious what the difference is. That's much more impactful. That would deserve or would want, I can see why residents would be much more concerned about that. So would it make sense to have a line where in that specific district, you can do a multifamily dwelling up to a certain size, modest size, and beyond that size, number of units, we maintain the special permit.
That would be being arbitrary again. So who's going to make the decision what the number is? I mean, I think it complicates it. I don't know if there's an expense to special permits. Is there an expense?
There is an expense.
To hire a lot of engineers and traffic studies.
Traffic study, there's definitely expense
Or drawings.
added to a developer per a special.
So I appreciate, Jeff, your kind of middle ground of making it site plan review up to a certain number and then beyond. That's not the proposal before us, and that would be a substantive change.
Well, let's think about that for a second. Would it, I mean, it sounds like a substantial change, but right now, the proposal is special permit for anything.
Yeah.
You would limit that, so it's more restrictive. So Is it
If the proposal is to eliminate special permit altogether
altogether?
for that zone.
He's suggesting that we do require it for certain situations, for so many units or above. Now, one could consider that to be less restrictive, I mean, more restrictive than what's being proposed now, so.
Well, it is.
So it's usually about, is it more restrictive or less when it comes to whether it's a substantive change or not?
It would be more restrictive.
So, by adding this, because right now it's special permit.
Oh, right. It's less restrictive because some people, certain sizes would be allowed to have it by.
Proposal is to eliminate it entirely.
I got you.
In the semi-residential district. So by adding a special permit for so many units, that, I don't know if that would need a new public hearing.
How do you do it on lot size?
What would be the number?
Honestly, I think that you're typically gonna be, the number of units you can build in that district is typically gonna be regulated by the size of the size of the lot, the height limit, the setbacks, the lot area per unit, all the other things that make it impossible to just build forever. There's all these other rules that make it so you can't build to the moon. But there are a couple of sites that are being discussed that can accommodate more units, and those are the ones that concern people. And so we shouldn't hold back on the smaller projects that we also need that aren't impacting people in a big way for the sake of controlling a couple of parcels that probably do deserve a bigger community conversation.
On lot size. 5 acres or less, no big deal.
None of
10 acres or
them are that big.
None of
I
them
would
are that
say-
big.
In that district.
Oh,
And we're specifically talking about the semi-residential district, which is
Right.
just a handful of blocks around downtown.
right.
That map shows it clearly, the
Yeah.
light green color next to
The
the.
BART site is at least partially in that district, for example.
Directly touching the CC district where it's already allowed.
Please review the MDR. I don't know if you've heard me. The MDR has a limit of 50 units equals MDR equals special permit. I don't know. Did that sink in?
Yeah, but we're talking.
I think I'm doing something we might be, I mean, they want to take away, I think the proposal is to make multifamily by right in the semi-residential district. The MDR is triggered at 50 units, right? So what about the 24 unit building that you're worried about? That's
The
between the two.
24 unit is not affected by the MDR.
I know.
I'm telling you that you were talking about trying to have a special permit come in at a certain point. I'm telling you, we already have that.
And we're trying to make it more restricted than 50 units, because right now, if it's 50 units for the MDR, and we say by right, and they only build 24, there's no special permit required.
I think, and most people have talked about special permits. That's their concern. So that's why I'm talking about special permits.
You want to put a special permit lower than 50?
It's not on the table.
So, I
Fine.
So let's, we need to have a number.
don't know how you do that.
Well, there's some developers and it's basically it would correspond to certain development typologies. So there's certain types of buildings that are probably more accepting than most people. And then you get to a certain scale where people might get more uncomfortable and want to have more process. So like a 6-unit building is, triple decker with 2 units on each level. That's not very big. That looks like a big house. So, but I don't, maybe others can think of a building that in their mind is, it's hard to have an arbitrary number. We just struck a rule that had an arbitrary number.
That's why I wouldn't.
Oh, sorry.
I would just leave the special permits in there. We're talking about big developers, and we're talking about someone who's gonna want to come in. We're not gonna get a developer who's gonna want to build too many small. It's not gonna.
There's lots of people that, there's people who build small buildings that would love to build a 6-unit building. They're local developers that are gonna run it locally. They're gonna put low-income people in there, and there's all sorts of wonderful development models that are trying to make housing more affordable, and adding layers of regulation is making it hard for them to make.
It's a matter of,
Get rid of them.
it's a matter of scale.
So maybe it is, okay, so if it's a lot size thing, we could look at the lots that we know if there were gonna be a proposal for those lots, we'd wanna have a say on that. And just make sure that our threshold is below the size of those lots, but includes all the lots that are small enough that it's not as big of a deal.
Which would definitely require further analysis before you can make a motion.
Yeah.
So we do that. Table it till January and come up with do some research on lot sizes and come up with a proposed plan for January and vote again in January.
Or you could go by unit number, like 6.
Yeah, the unit number is problematic because a 12-unit building might make complete sense and be perfectly comfortable on a larger lot.
Yeah.
So the unit number, I should have brought that, we should have used your number because it's more about the massing. I think most people are mostly concerned about the bulk of the building, the size of the building, not the number of units. And we just looked at a 500 square foot unit building, it could be 1,000, and the number of units is kind of arbitrary compared to the impact of the bulk.
So just as far as the process, when do we need to make a decision? Because we're talking about trying to tweak this potentially. But having to think about it more, research it a bit more. When do we need to send something forward?
I believe Kathy told me that we have till March,
Oh, okay.
not February, as I stated earlier. I think we have till March, but I don't have the exact date. I know that
If we delay it, I'm sorry.
I think we can delay it a month.
What do we need to research? What is it we're gonna
Well-
look for? Lot sizes that are available?
Yeah, and if we're talking about something, so I thought it was gonna be by unit. So if we did it by unit, so right now it's special permit for everything, and we say, let's just use 10, I'm just arbitrarily picking a number. 10 units or less is by right. More than 10 units requires a special permit. If you hit 50, it's automatically MDR. That wouldn't require a new public hearing, in my humble opinion, because it's less restrictive than the other way. Or whatever.
More restricted
yes.
than it proposed.
But if we did this research about lot sizing and all that, I mean, I don't know, that changes it slightly for me, but I could be thinking around that it would require a new public hearing for that.
And again, so. But I'm guessing it really is need, how much can a developer put on a particular piece of property is really where we need to find. So if you got a 2-acre lot, what can reasonably be put on a 2-acre lot? If it's 15 units, then, okay, 2 acres is 15 units. 3 acres may be the drawing point.
Quarter acre lots in this state.
Okay, quarter-acre lots, you can't build much on a quarter-acre lot.
I'm comfortable with number of units. If you were to make a motion about that, I would say that.
Hard to say what the number, so can we like forward a comment to the council to like a conditional or not vote on the specific thing, but say, this is our opinion?
Yeah, no, you can do that. You've done that in the past. The board has done that.
Then kind of, then I guess, like John and the people who put forward
Yes.
a chance to chew on it, because this pulls out thin air is kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a good suggestion. It has been done in the past.
I recommend that. So it is.
That make people feel better.
And I think that's.
We're trying really
I think
hard.
that's a nice compromise, a nice balancing.
Yeah.
Because like you say, there might be things people would welcome into the neighborhood and would feel to scale.
Wouldn't even know.
But
that.
they might be more daunted by this process.
I can understand.
Yeah.
Again, what are we looking for?
So do we need, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just asked, what are we researching? What are we gonna be digging? Who's gonna do it?
Well, are we?
Well, we're not doing any research. We're talking about units now, and if we're gonna pick a unit number. No, we're not doing that either. The board, if I just heard it right, someone's gonna make a motion to forward a positive recommendation or forward a suggestion to the city council that they consider this, what you just said.
Right.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Okay,
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Can you please repeat what the motion is?
The motion is,
It's hard
Make
to
a
hear.
recommendation.
Was it a motion to forward an opinion?
No,
it was a motion not to approve or deny, but to say, we think you should consider having this threshold middle ground.
right.
Now we go to the council to think about it. In the meantime, we can all.
Look at inventory.
Look at it.
do
About what that-
research.
yeah, look like, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Thanks for asking. I know, and we're trying to be clear.
I've made the motion, George seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you read the motion? It's hard to understand what you're doing.
Go ahead.
Eric, can you read the motion that you read?
Sure.
Sorry.
So moved by Saucer, seconded by Jones, voted 4-0-0 to suggest to the city council that the proposed amendment to allow semi-residential multifamily developments by right in the semi-residential district, that they consider a middle ground
A unit threshold.
The unit threshold, I'll call it a unit threshold. That's the motion.
Yeah, a unit threshold. So in other words, if you're gonna build 10 units, you don't need a special permit. If you're gonna build 11, you need a special permit.
If that were the number we came up with.
Just use an arbitrary.
Example, yep.
That's the idea.
Okay,
Good job.
I just want to note for time awareness, we're at the 3 hour mark of the meeting. And
I got an award?
I was saying, did someone need a bio break? But I saw the bathroom was downstairs. We're out of order.
How much more you got?
What else is on the agenda?
We have one more,
Medical thing.
one more proposed amendment. We have probably a very brief thing called approval not required, kind of a technical thing. And we were going to discuss the potential amendments to the site plan review process.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I recommend that you do the fourth zoning amendment on clinics by right in the central commercial district, but we hold off on the site plan review for the next month. It's getting late.
And do the A and R.
Do the A and R.
That has to happen. Okay, is there any objection from the board on holding off on that discussion item? Okay, so the last current proposed amendment is to allow medical centers / clinics by right in the central commercial zoning district.
I don't like the idea.
Is that yellow, is that the yellow on the map? The purple, okay.
It's downtown.
Downtown.
It's downtown. Is that gonna include the special rural?
No, just downtown.
Just the central commercial.
Stephanie. Oh, you mean the new.
Special residential.
No, it's just the central commercial district.
Unit
Oh, you
threshold.
include the other.
Unit threshold. Consider putting a unit threshold.
Okay, so now we've framed that. Stephanie, you got a comment?
Stephanie?
Yes, thank you. Stephanie Duclos, 166 Chapman Street. I do have a question as to why there is a reason behind lifting a special permit requirement off of any kind of medical facilities, as by definition in our current city code, why we would allow any type of that facility, which would impact many other issues in town, why we would allow that by right with no special permit and no oversight and no ability to challenge from an abutter. So I do want to know what the purpose behind this change is. And I completely disagree with moving this forward. I do have a court case that specifies certain nonconformities of certain medical facilities in this town. And I have to disclose that Eric isn't represented, and neither is Peter MacGyver at this meeting. So I would advise them to maybe not speak in favor of something that may obstruct a current court case. Thank you.
And I think you're, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Pete.
I think that the substantive question you asked about the rationale for this will be answered by our deliberation. Does anyone want to start?
I thought I had heard that the reason that there was already existing ones in the space, and the thought was to try and clean that up. And by doing the by right, it kind of cleaned up those existing facilities. I'm against it. I'm opposed to this particular suggested change. I don't think we should allow clinics by right anywhere. I think every clinic should be reviewed and determined on the effects and possible impacts it's going to have on the areas that we're going to put it in and numerous things. But I'm just against it. So, but I think that's the reason it was brought up.
Let me ask Eric, can you answer or speak to that question of the rationale for this proposal?
Yes, actually, it was discovered that there are many medical clinics and centers in the central commercial district that do not have special permits. Many of them. And yeah, part of that is interpretation of the ordinance in the past. And also that home occupations, right now you can have a home occupation in your single family home and you can have a doctor's office with people coming into your house if you get approved. But you can't do that in the central commercial district unless you have a special permit. So a home occupation you can do anywhere. And you can have a doctor's office, but you can't do that without a special permit in the downtown of Greenfield. So that was a concern of the building inspector. So that's the reason that we're proposing this.
I see a difference between a clinic and a private physician practice.
Yeah, it's the issue that I'm trying to understand the medical clinic definition. It seems pretty broad, I guess. Is that what you're saying? I mean, it spans, sort of like we were talking about before, it spans from a chiropractor operating out of the garage to a hospital.
Yeah.
Can you read the definition, please, Jeff?
And I don't know if there's other medical definitions, but this medical center / clinic, office and or examination rooms for providing diagnostic and outpatient medical or dental treatment and care for human patients and employing physicians, dentists, nurses, and other medical support staff. May include laboratory and outpatient surgical facilities, but shall not include overnight inpatient medical, dental, or surgical care facilities.
Anything
Maybe that's a
but a
correct-
hospital.
That sounds like a hospital, so maybe a hospital is a different thing.
The hospital is overnight. Anything where it's overnight is a hospital. Anything like that.
So it could apply to, like you said, Eric, a doctor's office in a home. Good. So right now, in the central commercial, if a doctor wouldn't be able to open that, a practice
Without
as a home occupation without a special permit.
Yeah, exactly. No, actually,
No, at home, you can do it. This kid moving to, you could move
yeah,
into
you just can't
downtown.
move into the downtown unless, the downtown doesn't have single family homes right in the downtown. But if there was, and somebody wanted to do a home occupation and they got approval, and some of this is by right, actually, not even, you can do the doctor's office by right listed in the zoning ordinance. So yes, that's the concern. You can do it in different districts as a home occupation, but you can't do it in the central commercial district without a special permit.
So part of this, as you were initiated into, was about cleaning up past practice, but I guess we're also thinking going forward, is this something that,
I'd like to see our downtown become a commercial center for people to shop and walk and eat and drink and have a good time and not become a medical facility. We already got half a dozen clinics there and there's got a couple of them there that I really don't like. And the individual.
won't name names. I
Don't
guess.
name names, don't name names, but there's, one or two that, down the street from the ice cream parlor, so I'm like, I don't want to see more of that in our town. I just don't.
Isn't it? You get a uniform way of approaching medical services.
Well, it's the question of should it continue as a special permit downtown?
Right, and the reason not to is because if you make it by right, then they don't have to retroactively force a lot of people who are already practicing medicine, I guess, downtown to have to go get a special permit. And that's like many small practitioners and developers, maybe a burden. They have to do a traffic study for their chiropractor office. Doesn't make sense.
Let me ask, what happened? I mean, somehow these people slipped through the process, or these entities slipped through the process. They did not get a special permit and they're operating. And what happens with that? Is there a statute of limitations? Do people now have to come for a special permit, even though they've been operating for a significant amount of time, or?
Well, that's a question for the code enforcement official, which I am not, but let me try to answer it the best I can. So the inspector of buildings, who is also tasked as the code enforcement official for the city of Greenfield, would have to actually take enforcement action against all these facilities that exist already operating in central commercial district without a special permit. He'd have to send enforcement letters to many different, number one, he doesn't have the time or the resources to do that, but he would have to do that over time. And then there's no statute of limitations, so he could write this enforcement letter at any point.
And so what would be the remedy? Would they then retroactively come for a special permit? Would they have to shut down and apply and then?
He could issue a cease and desist order. It depends on how he wants to take the action, but we thought that this would clean things up because number one, they're already existing, and did people even know they were existing without a special permit? Was it an issue? No. And the home occupation by right doctor's office is the main concern.
Is that something that has come up? Is that people are wanting to do that?
It happens on an occasion. There's home occupations that get approved. If it's by right, they don't need to go before a board.
Yeah.
You just get approved by it, the inspector of buildings. And So, and this is it's not put on one person. This is a thing that has occurred over many, many, many years.
Yeah.
So now there are many facilities. These people maybe didn't know they needed a special permit. They just came downtown, started operating, and no one noticed. Okay, until somebody did notice, and now something has to be done about it.
My fundamental question is there a good rationale for having it by special permit? And if there is, that doesn't seem the proper remedy, because then it seems almost backwards. It seems like, oh, well, they should have gotten a special permit. I don't know how that'll work out. But if there's still a good rationale to have that.
That's for the board to discuss whether you think.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm discussing. Yeah. My thought is, it doesn't seem unreasonable. I have some of the same thoughts you have about easing greasing the tracks or whatever, and it's not about any particular type of facility, but just to not have an imbalance.
Yeah.
Because, from a point of view of smart growth, you'd like to have a lot of different things downtown, including commercial. We've got a lot of empty storefronts, of course.
Right.
But, you always hope for kind of a, shift of some patterns and stuff like that.
I could see if perhaps we wanted to grant a waiver for existing facilities, but it should not be allowed for the new facilities. And unless someone can come up with, unless we have a detrimental effect on what some of these clinics or something, or someone's been a problem
Point of
child.
order, I have already said that I have mentioned the detrimental application of the nonconformities of those units and those
Stephanie,
facilities. I have to tell you this
We've
because
heard
I'm
you.
representing myself.
We've heard you, and we're deliberating.
Okay,
Just
Thank you.
trying to come up with a solution. I don't know how much, most of the clinics that are downtown, I think are pretty well established and solid and can afford to go through the hoops that we would require for a special permit. So I don't think it's going to break anybody. I just don't think, letting a wrong continue is the mode that we want to establish as a planning board, that we look the other way on something. So I'm against not requiring special permits, and if it requires the existing clinics to go ahead and get them, then so be it.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has the power to say, oh, you guys are all right.
No, we couldn't do that. I mean, the ordinance either stays as it is, or this amendment goes through. If it stays as it is, then enforcement action has to be taken.
I'm inclined to, it seems, I think there's still rationale for having that guideline. That's my
I
opinion.
think they need to remain. Jeff?
Peter?
He's been very quiet tonight.
I'm gonna abstain from this one.
Okay.
I guess for me, is there another, it feels like the range of clinics is really wide. And it's just, maybe it's not a one size fits all solution. But I also maybe don't know enough about.
You want to find that middle ground again?
It sounds like there might be specific types or sizes or scales or locations. There's got to be some kind of variation here. And so I don't know if there's a one size fits all, but I don't know what the alternatives are. Like if we said, yes, they all have to go get special permits, is it just as easy as them, okay, now they just have to go through the process, or is there something about their structures that they're just not going to be able to get the permit because they're just structurally incompatible with what the rules say, and they're going to have
They
to.
shouldn't be there. But then they shouldn't be there, right?
Well,
If they can't comply with the zoning and building laws that are required in that district, they shouldn't be there. I don't think that's gonna be I don't think it's gonna be a hardship. I think they're gonna have to go and, do the paperwork, whatever the engineering report, or whatever anyone else we're making all of our new developers go through. I don't think anyone's gonna pack up and leave town.
I guess one question is this a definition question, not a use question?
Definition.
So we were talking earlier about, we changed the definition of multifamily. We struck that section. We didn't change
Didn't change
where
the definition.
multifamily can happen or anything. We just changed the definition of what multifamily building can be. Didn't change
Limited
anything
to
else.
size. We didn't change what it can be. We limited to size.
Yeah.
The number of buildings.
Well,
It really didn't change the definition of
Well,
multifamily.
definitions can stipulate things like that, right?
Yes, they can.
Do we need more versions or breeds?
Whose definition is it? Is that ours and our
It's the
zoning
zoning.
code? Our zoning.
I mean, I just read the medical center definition, so it seems pretty broad.
I mean, the proposal before you, is a simple one. You know, you either agree with it or you don't, and
Mhm.
and you vote on it. The reason is clear why it's broke. We discovered, you know, it was discovered, there's many medical clinics and centers in the downtown district that don't have special permits. The zoning ordinance says you have to have a special permit. They're in non-compliance. Okay, so action needs to be taken by the city. He wasn't aware of that, or action would have been taken.
No, we understand it.
So,
Something.
yeah, so it happened over
No
time.
fault,
So
no faulting
and
anybody.
this was just a possible solution.
Yep.
So
I think I just need to understand, I don't understand the implications of refusing to remove the special permit. Like, is that gonna just, we're gonna lose 200 jobs and they're gonna tear down 5 buildings, or is it, it's hard for me to vote on it for that reason. I don't understand it.
I'll point out, we're making a recommendation.
That's
We're
it.
not deciding. And I know there's 2 of us. We have an abstainer. We have 2 people who have a certain opinion. So I'll make a motion to send a negative recommendation to the city council on this proposed zoning amendment.
I'll second that motion.
I abstain because I don't think I understand it well enough.
We don't have enough.
So
We can't really vote. Only two of
do we have, we need to, if you have 2 abstentions, is that, what did I do?
you have to have 3 votes.
Okay, so we can,
Oh, the table is-
no, I mean, we can vote, or we can, oh, you want to table it so we get
We can't
another,
vote. We can't get 3 people to vote.
but we can send it with,
An abstention a vote? Is that not a vote? No, it's just a.
That's it.
In order to send something to the city council, 3 people have to
Yeah,
agree.
either positive, we got to send either positive or negative. We can't send positive or negative because we can't get 3 people to vote.
we can't just report what our vote was, or.
So what do you need to make a decision? That's what, you need to look up. What do you First, to be able to make a decision. I mean, that's a legitimate question to ask. Is it not?
Well, it's pretty black or white. It's pretty either or.
No, it's
And-
not. I mean, he said he can't make a decision because he doesn't understand the implications. So he wants to understand what the implications
We don't
are. So I guess he needs to find out. How would you find that out?
I mean, they're gonna act on it at the next meeting, and we're either gonna have a recommendation or not.
They're not gonna act on it.
Well,
Is this the same thing that do we know when this
This
is
is the
coming?
same timeline as all the other
Yeah,
amendments.
they're not gonna act on it.
And we might have Sarah here next time, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to put it off a month, yes, for this one, you could do that.
Because it sounds like we can't.
Yeah, you can't.
You're not gonna reach a vote.
We can't get a vote. We can't do anything anyway.
Okay, so we'll just bring it back.
Okay.
You can, and it would be helpful if we're doing that, to have some more information about the
It
implications.
would be.
May not change our opinion.
Else we have a code official talk to us, tell us what needs to be done and how it would happen. Or if he's done it in the past. You ever had to do this in the past to a business? Go into them left or time, hey.
Oh, no, there's businesses that locate in there where he had to take action to say cease and desist and.
Well, we don't need one cease and desist, just want them to go and get the permit. We don't want to put them out of business. Just want them to come in compliance with our laws.
might be getting the permit puts them out of business. That's the thing I'm.
I can't imagine.
There you
It's
go.
fine.
Yeah.
So I guess we're just not taking an action tonight about this. It'll
Yeah.
come up again next month.
Chair,
You can reach.
Yes, Peter.
could I just ask a favor of Eric?
Sure.
Could you reach out to the city's council and get a legal opinion on whether or not I could vote on this item based on Stephanie's comment? As a city employee.
City employee, yeah.
Are you in a active court case?
No,
Then why wouldn't you be able to vote?
As a city employee,
Oh, as a city employee.
City employee, he's.
we're all technically city employees too, by some definition.
Yeah, no, you guys are, the same thing. I don't understand that why you think you can't vote. I think you can vote.
He wants to be
Hi,
sure.
sorry.
He wants to be
I
sure,
can't
but I
put my
can,
phone's on a charger. I want to respond to Peter McIver. Peter, you signed off on a fire safety permit, so you could potentially be called as a witness to that case. So that's why I wanted you to make sure you got the advice of an attorney before you spoke to anything that might perjure yourself. Thank you.
Yourself?
So Peter, do you stand? You want to get? some
I'm not the
clarification?
code official for any of that, so that wouldn't be me that would sign off on that, but
Do you want to change from abstaining, or do you want to try to get some clarification before next month? Don't mean to put you on the spot, just wanted to.
Yeah, I'm not really even sure what legal question I would ask the attorney.
Well, now that I've said it out loud, it's kind of confusing to me as well.
Okay, so should we just bring it back next month and you can see if you can get some clarification?
Yeah, we'll think about it and do it next.
Okay, thank you, Peter. All right, so that's done. So we're gonna have a last
A&R.
item business. Now, if you think something's obscure and confusing, it is an A&R. That stands for approval not required. And it's when there's a exchange of land between two property owners. It's
on property.
exclusive to Massachusetts, right, Eric?
Yes.
And we can't approve it. We just say, does it meet these criteria? And then we have to endorse it. And we have how many pages do we have of case law and stuff like this about this?
Yeah, it's about an inch thick or more.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Anyway, it's about as obscure as it gets. So we have this is located at
Is that property right up by the covered bridge?
371 Green River Road. And so it's
It looks like the covered bridge I see right there. Street farm at the end of the road?
Part of a parcel owned by Gregory and June Clune is being combined with
Another parcel.
another, right, so it's all them,
It's all their
just
land.
making, right.
I'm not quite sure what he was doing there, but it's all his land.
So it's shifting some of their own property.
And it's the covered bridge right here, this little cut across. Green line, right, yeah. This one right there, the road. The little Christmas farm at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
so just so the audience understands, the two criteria that have to be met in order for a board to endorse an A&R plan is that it has to meet the frontage requirement of the zoning district, which is located, and
He's pulling these two together?
it must have practical access to the lots through the frontage. So the Green River Road's right here, and this lot exists, and he's breaking it up.
Combine with other
Yeah.
land to join Gregory and June Calvin.
Combining those two squares.
Exactly, breaking it up from here and combining it to this.
How you doing?
Yeah. So frontage is not changing. And
It's creating one of those flag lots.
It's still a flag lot. It had been a flag lot.
It had been a flag lot
Right.
before, just
Yeah.
with a bigger flag.
Okay.
Okay, that's not
So,
fine.
so, yeah, it meets the frontage requirement and practical access.
very good. Is there a motion to endorse this A&R?
I move to
So moved.
endorse the A&R. Second, okay.
I will say Peter. Peter, second by.
And all in favor of endorsing this?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a second related motion?
Adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
No.
To make him in charge.
I move to allow George to sign on behalf of the board.
Oh, that's right.
Second.
It's a recommendation.
All in favor? Aye.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there anything, Eric, just last or next meeting, just make sure we get to cover that?
So next meeting will be July 2nd.
July 2nd.
January 2nd.
You got it?
I told you it's getting- January 2nd. We have a couple items on the agenda.
Thank you.
There's a special permit at 1385 Furniston Road. That's going to come before you.
Okay.
It's usually typically a ZBA special permit, but because it's in the zone 3 water protection district, it's for the planning board. See what else is on before
Our
that.
reorganization is now in July.
It's always been July.
In July, okay.
Yeah.
It had been changed.
Seems like some people, the terms changed to December, some of them.
Yeah.
It's history.
Some up to be reappointed, so.
Oh, you keep the reorganization July 1st.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
some different boards do it differently, so different times.
And of course, it'll be this one zoning amendment that you didn't deliberate beyond next month, and also the site plan review potential amendments.
Yeah.
And we should have the multifamily dwellings on there, because that might be, we gotta get news from the EDC or something about that, right? The semi-residential issue. We might need to consider. Take care, thanks.
The way I'm considering that is that you're just gonna forward that suggestion to them and you're done with it, right? Or are you thinking they're just gonna come back before you?
Well, I mean, once, yeah, they might have some feedback for us by then. And then we could make a recommendation based
Oh,
on,
I see. So this is just temporary for them to consider that and then you do another recommendation.
yeah, because this is, I think,
But you can forward this instead of a positive or negative recommendation. It doesn't have to be positive or negative. You thought, hey, we suggest this. We don't have any
We did
recommendation.
that on the other one. We did that,
it would be nice to have the council have, just to be clear,
Yeah.
I think.
But it has been done in the past and you can do that, but it's up to you, the board.
What do you guys think? I think it would be nice to have a positive recommendation about it. It's been rather than just a suggestion.
Which one are we talking about? Sorry.
This is about the semi-residential and the idea of, having it be, by right for a certain number.
Yeah.
And so I just think it would be good to have it come back to us with a number.
Yeah.
So this number, and then we vote on that. I don't think it'll last long.
That's the recommendation we made. We forwarded that recommendation.
That was a suggestion.
That's anyway.
And I'm saying when we hear back from them, why don't we just
Make
put our
it-
stamp of approval on
Oh, I
it?
agree. That's our job.
Okay,
Okay. Put that in the agenda too.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
I meant to mention that we have two alternate positions, so we could use one tonight potentially, and
I thought one of them was here, wasn't there? I thought one of our alternates was here.
We don't have any out there.
we don't have an alternate. No, I'm getting appointed. I'm on the council for approval of or non.
Hi.
I just wanted to say hi.
Yes,
I'm
hey,
Tom Bledsoe.
yes, Tom, we were just kind of talking.
I heard the word. all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
So I just,
Have you met everybody?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Jeff, I live on Chestnut Hill, moved here about a year ago, and I put my name in as be considered to be an alternate.
October,
I know,
I think.
in October.
Yeah.
I know you guys are short. I was on the Situate Planning Board years ago, and I have a long history in housing, community
Yeah.
development, and finance. So, but anyway, you got
And I think
got a lot on your hands here.
I did hear.
What an interesting.
Yeah.
Get an expert witness.
I did get your email, and I have no say over the mayor. I'm surprised.
I know that.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. It was more just whether this is a good fit, whether I could be useful, whether this is a good thing or not. It was more just to say hello.
Sure.
But anyway.
Yeah. No, but I'm sorry you haven't heard back because I'm up for reappointment at the next council meeting. And I was looking for your name and not.
She hasn't got to it.
Yeah.
You're trying to be alternate on the planning board.
Yes.
Right. Can alternates participate in discussion?
Yes.
oh, yes.
They just can't vote unless there's a member missing.
And you're the affordable housing expert, right? That was your background. You went for city council? Yeah, okay. I mean,
And I feel like somehow I know your wife and my wife know each other somehow. It's somebody.
tree committee,
Huh?
the tree committee perhaps?
It's the tree committee.
Well, she's not on anymore, but yeah. So we live on James Street, so we're right around.
I would tweet your mayor again. Send her another email. Huh?
I did. I sent another note.
There you go.
I did also. Anyway, nice meeting.
You're
able to.
This is unusual, I assume.
No,
No.
Not for zoning amendments, but
there's about six people there that are
Yes.
been saying the same.
Well, I've chatted with a few of them. I've had.
There were some
Conversations.
novel voices there.
Yeah,
the thing is, are we adjourned or no?
we're adjourned.
No, we're not.
Oh, did we vote?
No, we're still alive.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.